start. Good meeting. The meeting of the Green Sustainability Staff to start. I'm here. Okay. Okay. Just to refresh our memory, we've already read it in, but we have a resolution to express support for the application of the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to designate the Cuyahoga River as a state designated water trail and declaring an emergency. So we have with us today a distinguished member of our engineering department, the architect of Akron green infrastructure, which totally endears him to all of us. So could you please share your presentation?
Sure. I'm Pat Selman. I'm the Akron Waterways Renewed Program Manager, and I appreciate the opportunity to come back. We tried to get in a couple weeks ago, but had some delays in getting started, so we decided to defer it to this week. This is really, I don't want to say this will be the highlight of your day, but this is really exciting stuff. And a lot of this is, it's why we do what we do. I know we come down here a lot with things to build tunnels and sewage tanks and improve sewer systems and upgrade water reclamation facilities. But yes, a lot of it is mandated. We're required to do it as part of a consent decree. But I really, this is the stuff of why we do what we do. And I've got a lot of pictures. We'll run through them pretty quickly to just kind of show you what this water trail thing is all about. But I want to emphasize the only reason this water trail is possible is because of the city of Akron and the city of Akron residents and all the improvements that have been done in the sewer system. And this isn't in the last couple of years. This goes back 10, 20 years ago when Akron started committing monies to improve the waterways. And 20 years ago, this wouldn't have been possible, wouldn't have been dreamed of. And for a lot of us, this is what we dream of, is being able to have these opportunities to actually call the Cuyahoga River a water trail. So with that, let me run through. This is a resolution asking for support of the water trail application to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. They have several water trails throughout the state of Ohio, and this will be one of the first actually up in northeast Ohio, and it would be for the 100 miles of the Cuyahoga River. So let me start through the presentation, if I go the right way. The mission of the group, and this kind of represents the managing partners and stakeholders for the Cuyahoga River Water Trail. There is an organization that's been put together really for more than 10 years now, and more recently with some assistance from the Cuyahoga Valley National Park and through the National Park Water, River, and Trail group, they brought on a new coordinator to really try to help over the last couple of years to really push this forward and get it moving. But the mission is to designate the Cuyahoga River as a water trail, as a valuable resource for low-impact recreation, economic development, and tourism, and to support and enhance the river appreciation, conservation, and stewardship. I think most of us here may be old enough to remember what the Cuyahoga River was like back in the 50s and the 60s. This picture is actually one of the fires in the 50s. It's not the infamous 69 fire that we hear about, and actually we'll be not necessarily celebrating the fire 50 years ago, but we'll be celebrating the improvements to the river over the last 50 years. And I think one thing this slide is kind of pointing out is even though we had a river that burned, along with a lot of other rivers in the country, the Cuyahoga River wasn't the only one that caught fire. We've always been able to adapt and make use and make the best of things in regards to coming up with beer. I know some of you probably appreciate that. But we've always kind of lived with it and understood its value. And to tell you the truth, even when I first started 40 years ago, I would have never imagined that the river could get to the point where it could be a water trail and meet the designated uses that it's meeting now. Get that picture out of your mind, because this is what the river looks like now. Some pictures from Kent and from up in the upper watershed. That's the Gorge Dam Impoundment there, and up towards Cleveland through the flats. Some pictures of the dam, the rapids, and it's downtown Kent. If anybody hasn't been down there yet, it's gorgeous what they did with the river. And when you get up through the national park, and obviously a lot of us have been up there and utilized the park, and the Cuyahoga River now is actually part of their strategic plan to figure out how to use the river. And a couple of years ago was the first time they included the river as part of their strategy of how they want to develop the park. And that again would not have been possible without the contribution from the city of Akron. Real quick, for those of you that may not be familiar, this drawing shows the Cuyahoga River watershed. I'll step away real quick. The upper area here is where we get our fresh water from. A lot of this is the Akron watershed. Here's Lake Rockwell, where we have the water plant. And then down through Kent, through Akron, up through the Cuyahoga Valley, and then up through the flats in Cleveland. So it is kind of a U shape when you look at it, which is a little unusual. And actually, when you get up to the northeast corner, you're getting pretty close to Lake Erie. It's not too far from the headwaters of the Cuyahoga River to Lake Erie. What is a water trail? First, in order to be a water trail, it already has to be used as a water trail. So right now, we can with confidence say the Cuyahoga River is already a water trail. It just doesn't have that designation. People are already using it. There's canoe liveries all over the place. There's dedicated public and private access points. It's been mapped. It contains facilities that can fully utilize the river. There is a lot of stakeholder involvement with the river that creates education and recreational opportunities for paddlers and for just this non-impactful recreation. Kind of the bottom line then, to be a state designated water trail, you need to submit an application to Ohio Department of Natural Resources and have them designated as such. That involves promoting and improving public access, public use, realizing it as a valuable resource for that recreation. And a lot of that falls into the quality of life that's expected by the residents in the area, that they understand and can use it. And it really supports river enhancement, conservation, and stewardship of the river. Kind of the nuts and bolts of what a water trail is. We have to show that there's signage in regards to the trail. You have to have maps. You have to have education programs. You integrate it with other educational activities. Kind of an example of that, University of Kent has a outreach recreation program that involves recreating on the river. University of Akron has a recreation program, outreach program. So those kind of things lead to that impact on recreation. And then, of course, the economic development and the tourism. We'll get to a little bit of that. The Cuyahoga River Water Trail, these are the managing partners and stakeholders that are involved. Basically, a managing partner is somebody that owns property along the river and has river access. They're considered to be managing partners. And you can see it's the entire length of the 100 miles of the river are some of the partners. The stakeholders is a very impressive list of people that are involved on the committee. And people, again, the National Park, Friends of the Crooked River, Kent State, Ohio EPA, just a fantastic group of stakeholders who are all committed to really taking advantage of this beautiful resource that we have. There shows the areas of the water trail. And originally, the initial discussions was called the Burning River Water Trail, which really only applies to a small segment of the water trail, and it really isn't representative of the whole water trail. So what the stakeholders came up with was 5 distinct areas of the water trail that have very distinctive characteristics and uses. So we have the Scenic Water Trail, which is the upstream end, which again involves most of the City of Akron drainage area in regards to our water supply. The Heritage River is just below Lake Rockwell, which goes through Kent. The Gorge area, which we're probably most familiar with really, is the area that goes through Cuyahoga Falls and through the northern part of Akron, where we've got the Gorge Dam and a lot of the whitewater activity. The Cuyahoga Valley section that goes through the National Park, and then the Burning River section, obviously, which is up in Cleveland around the Flats area. So let's take just a quick tour through what these areas look like, because some of you may not be familiar with what some of the individual watershed, what some of the characteristics are. The upper end up in Geauga County, in Portage County, it's unbelievably calm. You think you're in the middle of nowhere when you're paddling. It's a very easy paddle for canoes and kayaks. Actually, there's a lot of areas during the lower flows you can go upstream. So you can rent your canoe kayak, you can paddle upstream and then float back down again. It's that calm. And it really is, I mean, those pictures are very characteristic of what the whole area looks like in that segment. And a couple more pictures down a little bit lower. The quick note on Lake Rockwell, we wanted to make that real clear. It's actually in the resolution. There is no access provided through Lake Rockwell. It's part of their comprehensive watershed plan. It is based on the fact that there's no public access at Lake Rockwell in order to protect our water supply. And all the partners are in full agreement of that. We really haven't had any issues with that. And to tell you the truth, that's going to stay as long as a lot of us are still here, because that is number one priority with us, no matter what happens with this water trail. We are protecting our water supply. The advantage upstream of Lake Rockwell with the trail, it really does enhance the stewardship and conservation upstream, which adds to protecting our water supply because you have more eyes on it. The more eyes you have on it, the more education you can bring out, which really is a true benefit of the upper section being part of the water trail. City of Akron has built a new access point south of Lake Rockwell. So we are enhancing the use before and after the lake to help for that portage around, that there is an access right below the dam across the street from the water plant. The heritage section is, like I said, that's the section that goes through Kent, and it really is heavily used, especially by the university and in the area of Russ Park. Gives you an example of where the old Kent Dam was that was removed a few years ago. And this ties a little bit back into some of the heritage and historic. They actually protected some of the old waterfall to keep that characteristic so people understood what was there, but then it also exposed the old canal that used to go through there. So they did a nice blend of providing the access for recreation and also improving the water quality in regard to the fish passage through that area. The gorge section, which is just unbelievable, the characteristic of that, this is what goes really from Front Street down into kind of the Peck Road area, down around Cuyahoga Street. And the rapids are phenomenal. They're class 3, class 4 rapids right now. If the gorge dam comes down, hopefully in 2 or 3 years, it'll be the longest stretch of class 3, class 4 whitewater rapids east of the Mississippi. So there's this tremendous potential through there. And obviously this is only for highly skilled level of kayakers can use that section safely. And the Cuyahoga Valley section, again, is unique. It's a little calmer, a little quieter. That's the Brecksville Route 82 Dam Bridge there that you can see in one of the access points. There are a few access points to the national park. That's something they're working on right now, is to increase their number of access points. And they hope to have something here in the next year or so where they'll increase the access. And they're also trying to work out how they can actually add to the liveries, whether it would be a private-public partnership kind of things, so they could actually bring some potential liveries into that area. And a couple more pictures through the national park. The Burning River section is probably, again, the most famous section. Obviously, you can see by the pictures that a lot has changed since the fires in the 60s and the 70s, or 50s and the 60s. Just a quick note, the upper right is Merwin's Wharf, which is across from Irish Bend. It's run by the Cleveland Metro Parks. Phenomenal place to go, again, have a beer. We keep relating, bring it back to beer, but a great place for food. Beautiful patio that sits out front. And any afternoon, you'll see, other than maybe this week, you'll see sculling. A couple of the high schools actually have their sculling teams that meet there just below where Merwin's is. And every afternoon, they're going up and down the river for a couple hours. And it's just its own unique experience compared to the other sections of the river. Quick note on some of the benefits. We've already touched on some of them, but obviously education and stewardship, just the awareness that it being designated brings involvement from the state, from Ohio EPA, from ODNR, and just from the local groups. You get something that's designated as a water trail, you're going to want to take care of it. And these groups are going to come out and help support it. And again, all these activities are already going on. This would just provide a little more public notice of those activities. The increased recreation opportunities as far as the access and the boating is there. I don't know. A big one. Actually, that's right below the water reclamation facility.
No,
It's not a cart.
it's
No.
not a cart.
No.
Is that a bass? Maybe a big bass?
No, I think it's some kind of steelhead.
Steelhead.
And since you brought that up, I always get like 2 cents in. Ohio EPA just finished their analysis of the river for water quality. The last 2 years, they've done the main stem and all the tribs. Almost all of the Cuyahoga River is meeting or exceeding the requirements for the fish habitats and for the macroinvertebrates for the bugs. And that is just phenomenal news. And that is, we are the reason why. I mean, I know it's been painful, but without the city of Akron, it would not be meeting its uses that it's meeting now. And that is a lot of hard work by the city of Akron to get there, and the Akron residents. The blue-green connections, there is a lot of connection with the bike trail. Obviously, the towpath does parallel most of the river. And also the railroad. The Cuyahoga Valley National Line already has a program where they'll take kayaks. You know, they have the bike aboard, they also have a kayak aboard. And there's also quite a few people, which really surprises me, that will kayak and bike. So they take their cars downstream, chain their bikes to a tree somewhere, go upstream with their kayaks, kayak down to their bike, ride their bike back to the car, and go pick up their kayak. So there's actually people that are biking and kayaking at the same time on the same trip. So there are a lot of connections, and the rail connection seems a lot easier to me than driving your car back and forth. But those connections are there, and especially in regards to the stewardship aspect. And obviously the white water kind of speaks for itself. I know that's not for everybody, but we can all go enjoy and watch the whitewater kayaking. In historical culture, I briefly mentioned about Kent and the dam, how they preserved that. There is a lot of history involved with the Gorge Dam and the section through Cuyahoga Falls, and obviously the Flats brings a tremendous amount of history in regards to the development of that portion of the Burning River. And there's, you know, the neighbors, the fish, the bugs, the animals, the plants, just phenomenal what's there in each different segment has its own characteristics. Some of the economic development, this isn't, and I always like to point out, number one, I'm always water quality, that's number one. Number two can be the recreation aspect, but we don't all kayak and canoe. Number three is the economic development opportunities with this. And anybody that's been in Kent since they did the work on the river and did their downtown development, the downtown development of Kent wouldn't have been possible without doing the improvements to the river first. And they've got their convention center down there, they've got the hotels, they've got the businesses that have sprung up. Now we see what's going on with downtown Cuyahoga Falls and their revitalization. There are a tremendous amount of economic development impacts in regards to this being designated as a water trail. And especially as we go out into the future, corporate America wants the quality of life that has these type of amenities in them. And in order for us to appeal to that corporate America for the citizens, they want and expect this kind of recreation to be available in this kind of quality of life. Councilman?
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Thank you. That was my question, was how can we capitalize and partner with our neighbors to make sure we get the best, take advantage of the opportunity on the waterway? Because I heard, well, this was almost a year ago now, the potential for Colorado Falls, that gorgeous over there. They were talking about how this would be the best rapids east of the Mississippi.
Right.
Or something like that.
Right.
That's what I'd like to know more, because, you know, I don't know if you heard, put this in context, when they were talking about bringing the NFL draft team, they said Cleveland and Canton are going to bring the draft. Like this bypass Akron. They have destination spots. And we need to find out how can we create ourselves a destination. And then maybe
Absolutely, and that's a big part of this, and Councilman.
Yeah, just, well, I think you've already talked about a long list, it's an impressive list of stakeholders, and a little bit shorter, but also impressive managing partners. So a lot of the outreach and coordination with other governments, businesses is already happening. I'm hopeful that you're also sharing this presentation with our Economic Development Department. Has that happened yet? Or
It hasn't happened yet, but it will.
Because Mr. Neal referred to this, but you know, there's a lot of opportunities here, and some of the other communities are already doing a lot of, you know, kind of just sort of, it's not an overall strategy, but tactics to take advantage of the fact that we need to bring people closer to our natural resources. And as we do that, we're also bringing people closer to each other. I think this has potential for a real catalyst of economic development. And I maybe differ with you a little bit about corporate America, but more just sort of green marketing, there's a lot of evidence, helps with millennials, small businesses that could benefit from this. It would help attract a lot more younger people, small businesses. I mean, I know the library thing, I know there's already people who are interested in using our waterways for that. So I hope you work closely with the economic development.
Yes, and you're, I'm sorry.
Is there other people who want to ask a question? Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're right on the money with the stakeholders and
Yes, sir.
managing partners. And also, we are working with the national park a little more closely in regards to the development of the water trail.
Could you
And
go
keep
back
in
to-
mind that whole upstream section through Jaga County and Portage County, that's also Akron up there where we have opportunities. And I think one of the biggest things we need to really go forward, this is going to help, is the residents of the city of Akron to realize that it's there, for one thing. We want to make sure Akron residents know to use the Metro Parks and National Park and the river. And I'd really like to see this spur more activities with Akron residents using these facilities. And then the rest of it will come naturally. Yes, Councilwoman? I'm sorry, Councilman.
I think it would probably be a good idea. I can remember you speaking about this a year or two ago, and you had given me a name of a woman who was able to come to my ward meeting and shared this knowledge that was unbelievable, and how much this is going to cost. This isn't a little thing taking down the dam in the falls. Number one is who owns it was the question back in the day.
Right.
But anyhow, having said that, is I am delighted for Ward 8, and I just wrote myself a note because we have the valley, the Merriman Valley, which you are well aware of, that has not been tapped to the full extent of the beauty and the resources that it has down there. So I can see, in fact, I'm meeting with Joe Mazer this week from the Cuyahoga Valley Railroad. So there's been ongoing discussions, but I am going to reach out to you to ask you if I could be included in as much of this as possible, because as we look at the businesses that I have down in the valley, we're getting old stock down there. It's at one point I had 3 vapor shops that were down in the most beautiful part of the city that has a state park, a metro park, and the Cuyahoga River. And you're thinking to yourself, what? And the railroad came by. But what we need to do is to stimulate that. I need to know more about this so that I may be the champion for that portion, which you are a Ward 8 resident, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
But not only will it impact the entire city, but I believe that if we get on board and we have a shared vision of what this could possibly do, it's only going to enhance the possibilities that are there. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Yeah, and it is truly the southern gateway to the national park. And none of this would be possible without the residents of the city of Akron. We want to make sure the residents of the city of Akron take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to, real quick to get through because we're running out of time. But
Right. Yeah, can you bring it to a close?
yes, we'll do. And I love running through the challenges so that we don't sit on these too long.
Yeah.
But obviously the dams are a challenge. Right now there's portages and we have to make arrangements to get around them. The access points are always an issue, and we need to make sure we have adequate access points that are public, and then the private ones can kind of fill in as we go. Debris, they're already programs where people are doing maintenance and removing debris where it's needed to be removed. And that, again, is all part of the stakeholders sharing, working with the group. And the flows. We all know that the river can see tremendous amount of flows during high storm events. Water quality continues to be an issue in regards to the bacteria, and we're working on that, and there's notification procedures for that. Working with the national park specifically to make sure we notify people when it is safe and not safe to be in the river. And there are very specific guidelines that we have to meet, of which this is part of the public participation in order to what needs to go in the application.
Mr. Zellman?
Yes, sir.
I know you put a lot of work into this, but I guess we have a little bit of an emergency situation and information that we have some speakers today to talk to us about some of the technical difficulties that we're having with our emails, our internet, or computers. So I'm going to ask you to prematurely end this a little bit. And one quick question, Mr. Kilby?
First, I want to apologize
Yeah.
to the committee for being tardy here, but I would really like to hear this from the beginning. But one question, I don't know if this was discussed, but I've heard from some people that Portage County is using this fracking slurry on their roads to melt snow. I don't know. And some people say it's radioactive or whatever. It's got a lot of chemicals we don't even know in it. Well, do we know if that's washing into, if that's true, is that washing into Rockwell and possibly contaminating our water supply? Is that your job, one of your jobs?
I'm unaware of that.
Okay, well, that's just something somebody told me. I think somebody ought to find out.
Okay, I'll pass it on to our watershed people.
I'm really sorry to community members and to Mr., especially to Mr. Zellman, but apparently our speaker, who has very important information, only has a limited time that he could address us. So I would like this to be passed. Is consent agenda okay, or what's your preference?
It'd be nice if we could pass it since we missed last 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so can I have a motion to pass this as an emergency? Yeah. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so is it to be part of the plan?
Planning is going to start in about a minute. Okay, I'll ask everybody to take their seats. Okay, we're going to begin. We have Mr. Pettit here, and it's just coincidental from what I understand that Mr. Pettit had 10, 15 minutes to be able to share with us the recent problems that we've had in reference to our software, hardware, et cetera, whatever the technical terms are exactly, just a limited amount of time. And so that time was supposed to start at 1:30, so let's go ahead and I will hand it over to you. I'll hand it over to Ellen Landers-Nish, if you'd like to introduce Mr. Pettit. And then what we'll do is, just procedurally, we'll open it up if there is any questions from the committee members first, and one question per person, because we only have a limited amount of time. And then we'll wrap up.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ellen Lander-Nish, Press Secretary. I'm sort of filling in as well for Mr. Hardy, who is unavailable, unexpectedly unavailable right now, but I'm sure many of you read or saw what was reported in the press, essentially. Yeah, my mic. No problem.
Mr. Kilby, next time if you want to get my attention, I'll recognize you. Well, I understand. Just
So
let me know.
starting Tuesday of last week, our staff began to notice the hallmarks of that we were experiencing some sort of malicious cyber attack that took the form of locked files that we could not access. That team immediately started working to determine the extent of the attack and protect all of our essential software, servers, hardware, etc. It began to impact certain services, including 311. So our 311 online portal was taken offline as a protective measure to ensure that that system was not infected. That also impacted the ability of cell phone calls from Verizon and AT&T customers to get through to the 311 call center. So this is all a very fluid, fast-moving situation. Again, we were, of course, also still in the midst of handling Winter Storm Harper. Essentially, we have turned the investigatory side of this over to a team that includes our local law enforcement, the FBI, the Ohio National Guard, and the Ohio State Patrol. Am I forgetting anyone? And these are elite cyber teams that are specially trained to handle these sorts of things. The feedback that we've gotten from the very beginning was we acted as quickly as we could have. We have the protocols, the software, the protective measures in place, everything that we should have had to basically make this as small an impact as possible. However, no system can ever be 100% protected from threats of this kind. This is, we believe, a very new form of malware that they've only seen recently in the last few months, and there have been other organizations of our size that have been impacted by this sort of virus. So the criminals involved in this attack attempted to do a credit card transaction and extract city funds through a credit card transaction. That was blocked by our system, so they did not succeed in accessing any of our funds, and that was another way we were made aware of the extent of this attack. It's our understanding that this is financially motivated. These sorts of actors come in, they try to figure out how to access the funds. If they're unable to do that, they basically put ransomware on our system as a last-ditch effort to get money out of the city. We back up our servers daily, so we have daily backups of all the files and information that we need. However, it just takes time to clean our system of this ransomware, and that's what the process that we're in right now. So you will see intermittently different services being taken offline. 311 is one. City emails, currently we're limiting access to city email. All those emails are still coming into our system. It's just right now we're not able to access them. So if you guys are getting emails from constituents, you will eventually be able to access those emails. Certain internal processes, and again, these are temporarily taken offline so that we can clean them and then restore them back to functionality. But I wanted to make sure that Mark was here and available to answer questions you guys might have. Anything you're hearing from your constituents or your own personal questions about how this might be impacting city services. Most important things to remember: no public safety infrastructure is being affected. 911, dispatch to police and fire, totally unaffected by this attack. Same with, we have no reason to believe that the attackers had any motive to harm public safety or do anything that would impact the safety of our public. They simply wanted our money, and they did not succeed in getting it. And finally, there's no reason to believe that personal information of our customers, our taxpayers, or our residents was harvested. So some of you were here, we had a prior hack, that was the incident. They harvested personal financial information of our customers. We have no indication that that's happened in this case. Of course, if that intelligence changed for any reason at any time, we would inform the public and council immediately. So that's where we are, but at this time, you know, Chairman, I'm sure CIO Mark Pettit would be happy to entertain any questions.
Very good. Have any statements or anything at this time, or
no?
Just ready for the questions?
That description is extremely accurate.
Okay, very good. I just have maybe just one question. And I'm a total novice at this, but what's the likeliness of finding out who was behind this whole thing? What's the likeliness? And I don't even know if you could answer that. But.
So what we found is the threat, and we've spent a substantial amount of effort in containment. During that containment process, we've collected evidence. So the evidence will be turned over to the proper authorities to get a better understanding and do the forensic analysis. So I really can't say.
Okay,
right
yeah,
now.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I like to think of it as there's two simultaneous things going on. One is the mitigation end, which is us making sure that our systems remain up and running. Again, that we're cleaning any malware off of our system and making sure that it has no impact on services. Then there's an investigation investigatory end. I mean, we were the victim of an attempted financial crime, and the FBI and law enforcement are in the process of investigating who would be responsible for that. And again, the FBI has been a great partner, Ohio National Guard, same, to help us figure out, hopefully, ultimately, who's responsible.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions? Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we've had discussions before, but if we could get some understanding on what's best practice between cloud-based versus maintaining and upkeeping your own servers, because I'd like to know, would it be best for us to just use our servers for backup and use, I know Amazon, Google, IBM, some of them provide a service where that's their skill set. They have the latest technology. They keep all of that. We would still back up our information, but we wouldn't have to worry about, keeping up with the latest antivirus stuff and all of that. We've had some conversations before. If we can get an understanding on what it would cost, first, what does it cost us to maintain our servers? What's that total cost? Versus if we use the cloud-based system. And then if we could get an idea on what is the best practice, because I remember some of you were here, we had talked about our legislative process and going with the company that we're using, which is, I think, OnBase, and they were new getting into it, where we would have to keep that on our server compared to going with, I think the company we were looking at was Granicus. And Granicus, the federal government uses them, I think our state uses them, Columbus uses them, but they're all a cloud-based system. So to kind of like summarize my question again, if we could get an idea on first, what does it cost us to maintain all of our stuff on servers? Then compare that to what would it cost if we were to go with one of these cloud-based providers that are out there, and just use our service for backup. And then last but not least, what is the best practice out there in government?
Okay.
I gave an example of those that we looked at before. All this stuff was cloud-based. So
Very good.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think that's something we can prepare to have a presentation at another time to answer those questions. Obviously, today we're trying to just answer questions.
No, I understand.
Sure.
I only ask because we've asked this question before. As we move forward, a lot of the purchases and a lot of things that we make aren't independent of themselves anymore.
Sure.
As we move towards smart cities, and smart cities are all cloud-based. They're not on servers. It will help with our purchases, because we could be making we could be buying something that's outdated before we even buy it as we move towards a smart city.
Understood.
We are,
Thank you.
just to help you understand the strategies that we're putting in place, we are developing a strategy that would be a hybrid approach. There are some systems that we will keep on site that make sense, and there were some systems that will be in the cloud.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if we can just stick to the current issue at the moment that we're dealing with. Any further questions or comments from committee members? First, Mr. Kilby, if you don't mind. Respect. Seeing none. Okay, Mr. Kilby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when did the 311 system go down, Ellen? When did it go down exactly?
Well, so it didn't go down. It was taken offline.
Oh, when did we take it offline?
Tuesday afternoon.
Tuesday at about 2 o'clock.
Tuesday about 3 o'clock? you
2.
said? 2? Okay, so what does that mean? Like people couldn't call 311 then, right?
They couldn't use the online portal, so
Yeah.
there's an online platform where you can go, and additionally, that affected the ability of certain cell phones to get through to the 311 line.
Okay.
Landline to landline, 311 was still working, so were some cell phones to 311.
Okay, so is it back up and running yet? Is it working yet?
No, through our remediation process, for greater than 24 hours, we disconnected the internet. We are in the process of bringing those systems back up. That process of cleaning and remediation requires us to perform software updates, bring servers up and down. We can't reliably to the public say that the system is available if we're rebooting on a regular basis.
It was put back online, and it's now been taken off again.
Okay, so when's it going to be back online?
We're encouraged to think that it would be later today.
Good. So how many 311 operators do we have? How many do we have?
There's about 9.
I was going to say, I think it's
So
9.
what were they doing when they couldn't take calls?
Oh, they could still take calls.
Oh,
It just,
okay.
the volume of calls.
They didn't have as many, okay.
Correct.
All right, so the ransom, did they actually try to extort money from us? Did we get an email from
So,
them?
yeah, how it works is they send you basically a link, and you have to follow it to the dark web, and there's a ransom request will be made then. We did not go through that process. Again, we don't need to pay ransom to get access to our
How
files.
much were they
The
demanding?
FBI, the FBI has that information in their hand, and it's part of their investigation.
So what did they want, Bitcoins?
We don't
or-
know, yeah.
You don't know yet?
Yes, they
That-
did
That's
want
part of the,
Bitcoin.
part of the FBI's
All right,
investigation.
thank you.
Very good.
I did, if I could, Mr. Chairman, mention one
Yes,
thing.
yes. Landers, Nish?
There have been intermittent interruptions to online payment systems or credit card systems. So if someone tried to make a water utility bill credit card payment online, there may be a time when that service is unavailable. Same with the phone. They may, for short periods of time, not be able to get through. We have suspended all penalties and fees and water disconnections during this period. So no one will be assessed a fee for late payment. No one's water will be disconnected until all those systems are available to customers. Again, people can always come in and make payments. They can make payments by mail. The credit card system should be available. But if they are not, people should not panic. We are not going to shut water off, and we are not going to assess any fees or penalties.
Very good, thank you.
Same for any other payment system. If it's not water and sewer, it's, you know, any other payment, no fees or penalties.
Very good, thank you. Samobian?
Thank you for the info. Just curious, has this ever happened before? Have we had to take 311 offline before?
We have had service interruptions to the online portal for system maintenance. This has been a longer duration than usual.
Okay. I was just curious if there was another number that people could call or another way they could go. I know
The
they get
phone system
call.
has been up and running.
Right.
The online portal that we developed within the last year where people could submit requests based on geolocation and on the map has been up and running since at the beginning, only down for maintenance. This has been a longer duration than usual.
Okay. So if there were calls, or not calls, if there were people trying to reach 311 through the other mechanism that was taken off, when you restore it, would that be there for them to get, or?
It will be available for them to submit requests.
Okay.
It's basically a form where people fill out their contact information and the complaint, and it submits via a computer system.
And something that might be helpful to note, because we are experiencing some maintenance and things being taken offline, some of our traditional modes of communication, email, things like that, our social media channels, Facebook and Twitter, we are trying to keep those with the most up-to-date information. So when 311 online is back up and running, that would probably be the first place that we will post, hey, 311 online is back up and running. So to the extent that you or other people follow our social media outlets, that happens to be the fastest way we can communicate when things like email are impacted. So just a reminder to let people know to follow those, and that should have the most
Thank you.
up-to-date information.
Thank you. Ms. Keith? Oh, do you have a question? No. Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, is something bouncing back to folks that can't get access, just to let them know? You know how sometimes if someone's out of office, something bounces back. I don't know if with it being down, if we're able to actually bounce anything back to them, but
I don't think we're having the automatic bounce backs right now.
okay, thank you.
Ms. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark, this question is for you. I tried to send out emails, and it says that they can't do that. Now, where do those emails go? Because they're not in my sent box, and they're also not in my drafts. Are they just somewhere up there?
That's a good question, because as a part of the remediation process, we reset all user passwords, which would require somebody from IT to come and help you. So it's highly likely that those emails did not get sent via the city system.
Okay.
And I would
very
have
good.
to figure out which ones I sent that said that. And, okay. So, first of all, I appreciate everything you have called in and done, and I think, Ellen, it's good to reiterate one more time that our safety numbers and everything like that are still usable, are still workable, and that no one, I mean, if you need assistance in the manner of police or fire or EMS or whatever, that's still good. And the other thing I think that's important is that with this glitch, people are not going to be fined for turning in late payments, because I think that will be another important thing. And the last thing is, you know, I want news release to go out right now that says everything that's happening so that my residents know. However, they can check Facebook and Twitter. So if I would repeat 3 things to people, I think those would probably be my 3 biggest points. And we're hopeful that by the end of today, this will be working. Would that be correct?
All those points are absolutely correct. Also, as far as a news release that summarizes much of that information, we are actually, we've figured out a workaround. We're going to use one of our partners at Summit County is essentially going to send some information out through their channels as well. So again, we're doing our best to make do with what we have. And nope, no fines or fees for late payments. No reason to believe that anyone's personal financial information has been harvested. 911 up and running. There's no reason to fear that you will not get through to 911 if you call. And we are doing all we can to clean up and make sure all those other services like 311 are available as soon as possible.
Very good. I take one more question. Mr. Swirsky.
My constituents mainly contact me through email the last few days, obviously. Will we be able to recover the emails that were sent to us and be able to read them at another point? You're talking about having it all finished by this afternoon, maybe tomorrow. Will we be able to read these emails that were sent to us?
It's depending upon the email system they were sent. Typically, they queue up and try to resend for a 24 to 48 hour period and then go back to the original sender. So if they're in a queue mode, it is highly likely that they will be delivered to you from the last several days.
And I believe it's safe to say if they don't successfully get through to you, that user should get a message that says this message was not able to be delivered. So the person trying to contact you should get a response that says their email to ward1@akron.gov was not able to go through. So there should be some indication to them that they would need to reach out to you again.
Okay, and the ones I sent out, will I be able to recover those?
If you sent a mail, it should have been delivered. And if it was not delivered, it is in a queue waiting to go.
Okay. So I'll be able to recover it?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. Out of respect for your time and council's time, thank you for everything you're doing. I know everyone's putting in extra time to overtime to get this back online, to get us and find out what exactly happened. We appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we'll begin the planning committee meeting in about 30 seconds. Get everybody an opportunity to get where they need to be, and we'll begin planning shortly. Okay, very good, thank you. Now we'll begin the planning committee meeting of Akron City Council. Yes. That was, it was just a limited amount of time that Mr. Pettit had, so the planning committee, seeing how we meet at 1:30, he was here at 1:30, so that was part of the planning committee, if you will. So now we're going to go into the agendas. Okay, thank you. I would like to entertain a motion that we accept the minutes of the previously held meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, is it okay?
Mr. Fusco, we don't have any minutes because we couldn't retract,
From the previously held meeting, there's no
We'll
minutes?
approve them at the next meeting when everything's up and running,
Okay.
for everybody, actually, so.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Can we begin then, Mr. Keith? Is that
Yes.
okay? All right, very good. In terms of the list of regular legislation, we'll go ahead and take time on that, short of any concerns or questions. I will remind, though, everyone here that at 4 o'clock, we will have the budget review. We'll continue that process at 4 o'clock. Item number 1, under new legislation, is authorizing the Director of Planning and Urban Development or his designee to sell city-owned property located at Steiner Avenue to Sawfield Square Properties Incorporated. Is there someone here to speak on this?
Yeah, this is a small piece of property the city owns there at Sawfield Square Properties, Steiner Avenue and South Main Street. This is a 4,200 square foot area basically used for parking. The city would sell it to Sawfield Square Properties, Inc. for $2,500.
Is this commensurate with our typical sale price
It is,
per square foot?
yes.
Very good. Questions or comments? Mr. Mobian?
I couldn't hear what you asked, but is this at 50 cents a square foot?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments? Hearing none, is consent agenda okay?
That's fine.
Is there a recommendation for consent? Is there, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Number 2, authorizing Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into contract or contracts with Habitat for Humanity for the construction of sanitary sewer system improvements on or around East Avenue.
Yeah, this is for a new development. Habitat for Humanity is developing 8 new single-family homes at the corner of East Avenue and Chester Avenue. There is a need for a 20-inch or 20-foot sewer easement across the property. Habitat will build that sewer, and the city will maintain it afterwards. And actually, Rochelle Sibio from Habitat for Humanity is here. Okay.
Very good. So in essence, this is allowing for the construction of sanitary sewer system, the cost of $72,000. For
Yeah, and I have
private
a-
funding,
That's,
is the funding?
it's,
Yes.
Private fund, oh, okay. Sibio, if you'd like to say a few words. Typically, we don't, but in this particular case, Mr. Antonucci did mention that you would be here this afternoon, so if you'd like to say a few words, you're more than welcome to.
Sure, I'll be very brief with my remarks. So this is a piece of property. It had one address initially in 1954, East Avenue. It was a bowling alley. Akron Children's Hospital purchased the land some years ago, I believe in 2001.
That's okay.
Not really sure what they were ultimately going to do with it, but at some point it didn't make sense for them to continue to keep it. And conversation with a Habitat board member that worked at Akron Children's and Bill Considine was donating the property to Habitat in order to build new homes there. So we went through that process. They donated it. We had it plotted out, worked real close with Mike Antonucci, and appreciate his time that he spent helping us to develop this. That's what you have in front of you. It's now 8 individual parcels. We did a groundbreaking there in August with, the mayor was in attendance and Councilwoman Sims was in attendance. So we have 8 laid out. 2 of them will be 4 bedrooms, the rest will be 3-bedroom homes. You've got some elevations there, some house plans. They'll each have a little bit different front to them, different spindles on the railings, different siding on the front, or a shake siding of some kind, just to make them each look a little bit different. Each will have an attached garage to it. I've also worked with Helen Tomick in planning on some home federal dollars for these projects. So the sanitary sewer will be developed. We've already done the easement, recorded that to the city of Akron. The families will have to maintain it as far as mowing it as a part of their property, but the easement is there for the city to access.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Questions or comments? Okay, very good. Seeing none, consent agenda, or would you? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see Ms. Sims. Hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the private funds that we?
No, private funds would be outside of the city.
So are we, but we're the
Well,
fiduciary for it?
Yeah, the legislation says that we're going to be contracting with Habitat for Humanity for the construction of the sewers, but the payment thereof is not going to be from the city. It's going to be private funding.
So the
from another source,
$72,000 is,
not from the city.
but we have the money?
It's not going to be from the city. It's Ms. Sibio?
Yeah, so Habitat for Humanity has a contractor, Boss Union Contracting. They have a bond with us. We have a bond that we'll have to bond to the city for this development. We will be paying the contractor. We've raised the private funds to do this.
So could someone explain just quickly the bond part of the arrangement? So I'm just trying to understand why
Sure, no,
the
that's-
$72,000
yeah.
appears here, and if it's private.
Yeah. That's the cost to Habitat.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, the bond is
Thank
to
you.
ensure that the work's done. But is someone here willing to speak on this, Mr. Luddle, on the bond, the use of a bond?
Yeah, the bond they're putting up is for the construction, but there's no cost to the city for this construction. It's all funded by Habitat.
So we're putting up the bond for the $72?
No, we're not putting up the bond. They're putting up the bond.
In the back of the legislation, it says the $72,000 is private funding.
I've read that, but this is not typical to have money that we're not possessing or that we're not doing the actual bonding for to appear in our legislation. So, just,
Yes, sir, Mr. Capper.
thanks.
This is Travis Capper from engineering. The 72,000, we just showed it because it's the cost of the project, basically. But there's no cost to the city. We just have to get legislation because we're entering into a development agreement with Habitat for Humanity for them to build our sewer. So that's why it's shown that way.
So is there a development agreement that's attached to this?
There's one that's being put together that the service director will sign. Any private development that puts in public improvements, we do a development agreement with the developer, and they got to abide by our standards and install it correctly, and that's what that development agreement will be.
So with all due respect, do we typically get the development agreement before we approve the?
No, usually we get legislation to allow us to sign the development agreement.
Do we have we don't see a rough draft of the agreement, we just?
I mean, we have a rough draft. Usually, I don't think it usually comes to council.
Okay.
Just the legislation allows us to enter into the agreement, but we have a draft of it.
Thank you.
Very good. Further questions or comments? I'd like to entertain a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Motion for suspension of rules.
Is there a
with
second?
Favorable report.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
You guys have it. Thank you. Very good. We'll now move on to, I believe it's item number 3, which is authorizing Director of Neighborhood Assistance or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts with the Board of Education of the Akron Public School District for the Community Learning Centers Akron After School Program in order to provide learning enrichment activities. There's someone here wishing to speak on this. Mr. Valley, I see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Planning Committee. This is to provide financial support for the Akron Public Schools for the after-school program. We've done it several years. This is the same amount of funding that we've done for the last several years, but we do have Desiree Bolden in attendance, and she would like to go ahead and present.
See that? Absolutely. We will. Please step forward and feel free to enlighten the committee and council. Although I think we're all very familiar with your program and appreciate all you do.
Yeah, I'm Desiree Bolden, Manager of Extended Learning from Akron Public Schools. I'm excited to be here, and it's so great to see all the champions of Akron's kids surrounded by me. I have some information in folders here for the Planning Committee if you would like. I'm reporting on last year, FY18. We served during the school year about 1,800 kids. We used the City of Akron money to extend all grant. 21st Century is our main funder for the Akron After School program. You know, grants can be challenging. They don't all come at the same time and they roll off, and we have the ability to use the City of Akron money to help spread the program to other kids. So we have currently 5 full sites. By a full site, that runs 2:30 to 5:15. That's funded by 21st Century funds. We also serve second and third graders in all the rest of the elementary buildings. So we're in every elementary building extending these funds and doing reading intervention for the modified sites, and then the full sites we do reading and math. That's a compliance thing from the federal government. So last year, during the school year, 1,800 students. During the summer, with the funding that we were able to navigate for summer, we served 2,800 students for summer learning loss. This year for fall, we've had some grant roll-offs. We're about $195,000 in the deficit from the year before, but we had about 1,100 students sitting in intervention seats this current fall. So we're anticipating spring will look the same. We have in your report, you'll see our evaluation from last year. You will see that we have significant growth, which significant is the key word in evaluation. It means that this is statistically significant. That's two hard words for me to say together. What's exciting is that you have grade levels in the 7 full sites last year that showed significant growth. When we compare our after-school kids, we compare them with the same group that chose not to attend, so that we're doing apples to apples. Does that make sense? Okay. So you'll see the ones that didn't come are intensive targeted, the ones that did come are intensive and targeted, and then how did they grow and what was the impact? We have some great showings of kids progressing and having rapid growth. We also, some of our challenges that we're still working on is it's always human resources. We have more kids than we have teachers sitting in front of them, and then it's a voluntary program, so we don't have everyone sign up. But what's really great, and we're really transparent on the numbers, I've given you data on each grade level, how many kids are intensive and targeted in there, and we reach about 66% of them for Akron After School. So we have a great draw, and we're really, that's a great number, that out of all those students that we're capturing 66%. So I'm really proud of the work we're doing. We have a whole bunch of people surrounding them, and we're excited that you're part of that.
Thank you. No, thank you. And we're proud of all the work that's been done over the years and all the students that benefited. So I see here this, in essence, the budget, and this, I don't know if there's a typo or not, and I'm not quick enough on my feet, but I see 21st Century is 800,000?
Yes.
So our funds are utilized to help leverage that.
That was for last year. This year, it's 600,000.
Okay. And the budget here is 185 from the city side? Yeah, 185 from the city side. And then I see Title I, is that $250 or $250,000?
Oh, is it 250,000?
Okay, I figured so. There's a zero.
Yeah, just add an extra zero. What's a zero, Mr. Fusco?
Got it. Okay, very good. Thank you for that. So in essence, there's going to be a bit of a $200,000 deficit, which are from last to this.
Yeah, and grant writing season comes up again. They're due in April. So just think of me as we're writing all the grants. And we have City of Akron as a fiscal partner, AMHA as a fiscal partner, and then the Akron Public Schools, and that gives us the opportunity to write more grants. We're allowed 3 per grant.
Okay.
Per fiscal agent. So.
Okay, so we're permitted to step up and ask on behalf of this program as well.
Yeah.
Very good. So we'll, Mr. Segedy, I would have just asked that we step up and do what we can in terms of trying to get more grant funding to make up that deficit. I think that's obviously important.
Yes.
Good. I would ask if there's any question, Mr. Swirsky.
Yeah. You gave us some very impressive numbers. One more question about numbers, just how many schools is it that weren't, you said every elementary.
Yeah.
How many is that?
28. That includes
28.
Bridges.
Right. And just to add, and Desiree and I recognize each other, I taught in that program for about 10 or 11 years. It's hard to put in words how important it is for the families that take advantage of that program, and especially for the children, the parents, just to extend the school day, to provide enrichment, and the math scores being lifted, the reading scores being lifted, still targeting the 3rd graders?
We are targeting in the full sites where we have full funding for the longer day, 2:30 to 5:15, we target K through 5 or K through 6, depending on the building. In the modified sites, we target second and third graders. So we're trying to use the money as much as we can to spread it out.
Yes, you've expanded it quite a bit.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent.
Yes.
And thank you for your work. How long has this program been in existence?
Since 1998.
1998.
Yeah.
Wow, so you've had an amazing ability, staying power,
Yeah.
and in fact, you've grown.
Well, it takes a
and-
team, so yes.
And putting together the different funding sources. And how many staff are employed? Do you have a number?
We do. It's about, on the Akron Public side, it's about 350 teachers, and we have a job code of recreation specialists to help support the kids in their youth development time. We also contract out with vendors, like Mad Science.
The nature dude was one of those vendors, I think.
Yeah, he disappeared. I don't know, all of a sudden he got busy in his
He ran
political
for-
career.
He ran for office.
All right, okay. Let's, if you don't mind, with all respect, Mr. Swirsky. Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. This program covers the school year and the summer, or just the school year?
I'm sorry, can you
Does this
repeat that?
cover the school year as well as summer? Or does it just?
We concentrate first, our first priority is the school year, and then whatever funds that I'm able to garner from anywhere else and left over 21st century dollars, we put towards summer programming. So summer programming is the second priority.
Okay. If we can get an idea, because I remember last year, maybe last couple of years, a request came in to support the summer slide program. I don't know if that falls under you or not, but at that time the question came up, do we leverage our partnerships within the community? One, high school students who can assist with being, like I'm looking here at the reading component, reading coaches, but more importantly, and I don't know if Mr. Valley will remember this, working with those nonprofit groups that have children after school already, a lot of the sports teams, scout troops, things like that. At one time, we had incorporated with the sports teams a tutoring component, that they had a tutoring component so that they can use when they use the gyms, partnering with them to support the work that you're doing and help make these dollars go a little bit further. And if there is a way for that, I know I would like to work with you, because that's a conversation we're having within my ward right now.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Always open.
Very good. Further questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry. Sims, then. Ms. Sims?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would concur that perhaps we look at any other way we might be able to increase the amount of resources that we provide. But looking at the children that look disproportionately African American, as we look at an overall plan, even before we add additional resources, are we looking like at, I'd like to see universal pre-K for one, but are we looking at the work that United Way is doing also to help kind of look at how we get at some of these issues even prior to them getting to the third grade?
Yes, absolutely. So if you'll see, I've included in that packet a list of partners. We have Ohio Guidestones, we have the YMCA. YMCA is currently funded by the United Way to do the goal, the third grade goal. Don't quote me, I know I'm saying that wrong. So they, instead of directly funding this intervention program, they're funding the Y to do the catch program in our youth development to help support the third graders, and but we also do kindergarten and things like that. So yes, the wraparound is there, and there's opportunity for everybody.
So is this a part of the wraparound? Is what we're doing here? Is this part
Yes,
of the
youth
wraparound?
development. We have people who, the YMCA and their catch program, they're directly funded by United Way to help support their third grade goals, bold goal.
That's the word.
Yes.
So let me ask you just finally, so I guess what I'm asking, is there an overarching plan that APS has with some of its partners? If I wanted to see the plan and what our targets are, that I could see that?
I have the grant that for the 21st Century Grant that I'd be happy to share with you on what we presented, and that is our guiding document for what we're doing for intervention and youth development and all the federal compliances that go with that. Is that what you're looking for?
No, I was more thinking like a strategic plan that we have, not just the expected outcomes, but what the plan looks like overall, including with all these partners. But
well, I can tell you it's very succinctly written, and I have to say well written in our grant, and it really does spell out the whole plan. And the district, by adopting and saying yes to the grant, has made it part of our strategic work for intervention.
That's good. Thank you, and thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Desiree, thanks for coming down, and your partner over there in crime. You know, this is one of those times like when the collection basket comes around, you really want to put more into it because it's so worthwhile. And as I look at these numbers, I do have one question, but what I want to reiterate to the people that are here, it's so difficult as a teacher when you look at your students and you can only reach so many of them in a typical day, and you're hoping that at home they're getting the support that they need. And so when we look at who we want to be serviced, there's certain criteria. So if you're looking at your particular school, I want you to know there is certain criteria that has to be met for them to be invited. But you're doing this and continue to do this with asking us for no more money. And that is hugely commendable, number one. And I know that Councilman Fusco, myself, and others around this horseshoe volunteered our time for the summer slide. So I think volunteers are being used and trained, and what a great impact we feel we have on the community then. So thank you for all that you do to make that possible. My question would be, as I look at my grandchild's school that she goes to, and it's King Elementary School, 11 students total were invited. Okay, so that's second and third grade, 11 total, according to the criteria. In the modified attendance, it says that 13 showed up, which is great. But how does that equal out that 11 were invited, and then if you could just share with us?
Great question. So we have an intensive targeted list. That is, and I'm going to use targeted twice. So we have an intensive and targeted. Those are students at the bottom of the ring there, or the line. And then those are who are the neediest. So to make it equitable, we're trying to get the resources out to those who have the greatest need. There they are. So then we also have third grade guarantee. So we have students that are having to pass the third grade test in order to progress on to fourth grade. So when our intensive and target numbers come out, we have those. Some of them haven't made that list yet. Then we get made aware by the school. We have these third graders that are not passing. So can we add them into intervention? And it's yes. So that's why we went from 11 to 13 at King.
Which once again proves how you do so much with so little, and you don't just work from one source, but you keep going back to the source saying, how can we make this better, and where are more needs? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Back there too. Thank you.
Very good.
And that's Karen Moore, Extended Learning Program Coordinator for Akron After School, sitting back there.
Okay,
Karen Moore, yeah.
Very good. Ms. Amovian?
Desiree, it's so good to know that after all these years, as one of the school board members who started this with you, to see that it's branched out to all of the schools and that we're trying to do more with less. Now, I see that the request is $185,000 and that in the material, it looks like you're looking for $200,000 from each of the three. So how do we make up that $15,000? Do we do it in kind, or we give you additional $15,000?
You can do whatever you would like.
So you're asking us for the $200,000?
I'm asking for $185,000, which is...
Yeah, I realize
yes.
that, but the budget is structured for 200,000.
Yes.
I see. So we just have to find the 15,000 if we can, so.
Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you for the work that you've done over the
Thank you.
years. And
I
I'm
appreciate
so
all
happy
of
to see
you.
that the program is still there and it's still going strong.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
very much.
Very good, thank you. Further questions or comments? Ms. Sims again?
Mr. Chairman, and that's to the point earlier, as we look at how we might be of additional service through additional resources, to look overall at how we're augmenting the program, so we're really meeting all of the needs, not just those who are selected to come, to the point that Councilman Neal made about other entities out there that are doing this kind of supplemental undergirding work, that we have an overall arching plan. So I'd be hopeful that we, in addition, I would like my name added to the legislation, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. Clerk?
I got it.
Further questions or comments? Pleasure of the committee.
You could add my name as well, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Add my name as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Is this, there's a time frame on this that you need it quickly, or
Yes.
consent agenda okay, or do you need it fairly quickly?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, did you say, do you need it
wait,
fairly?
wait, we can vote on it next week, or we can vote on it tonight.
You
Is
can
there-
do, either way.
It doesn't matter.
Yes, we're just about a month behind in our normal schedule, so.
Okay.
But yes.
All right. Well,
We have the budget.
I'd like to make a motion that we, is there a motion here for suspension of the rules with a favorable?
So
moved. There's a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Nothing else to come before the committee. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay, our next committee will be Public Service.
But I can plug it in. So I can just jump on and change turn and plug it in. That's good. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let's just talk about it. Yeah, I don't say him as Ginger.
Well, your record speaks for itself.
Okay.
I don't want to give you nothing personal. Yeah, I don't know what your schedules are there, so they know. Okay, I can provide the, okay, remote. Yeah, so that's not.
Love you too.
She has me, right? Just to say, whenever this comes in, you're the sponsor. So what you could just say, look, this came in late. Don't even talk about this one. I will right now.
I'd like to call the Public Service Committee to order. As I look over here, we have all members are present. As we know, we do not have minutes to be approved today. We will approve them the next time we are in session, which will be next Monday. And so we will look at our first order of business on here, and this is number 4. And it is an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a lease agreement with Summit County, Ohio, for use of the parking spaces located on the upper level of the Harold K. Stubbs Justice Center parking garage, finding such property is not currently needed for any public use and related findings, and declaring it an emergency. Mr. Moore?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee. The county's been using this portion of the deck for a number of years. This would enter a lease agreement, which we would charge them now $75 per month for the use of those 32 spaces. They will pick who parks in the spaces from the judges, the prosecutor's office, and also the sheriff's office. But this would be a formal lease agreement for 5 years at $75 a space.
And is it correct that we have never done this before? We
have
in
not
this particular
Yeah, we have not
parking
charged the
deck.
county in the past, but now this would get $75 a month for each space.
And the number of spaces are?
32.
32. Okay, so everybody can do their math, 32 times 75, and come up with the revenue of the month.
It's about $28,000 a year.
Thank you. Okay, are there any questions from the committee? Councilwoman Samples.
Thank you. So when you talk about the upper level, we're talking about the very, very top floor of the building, when you go up the second one?
It's the parking garage, so there's the lower level and the upper level. There's only 2 levels in the parking garage.
This is the deck that's attached to the Stubbs building.
Underground,
It's underground.
the secured one for the judges.
Okay, so this will be for the common police court judges and the prosecutors?
They will choose who goes in there, but they said it's secured parking for court staff. So I would assume judges and prosecutor, yes.
Can you find out for sure if it's going to
Yeah,
be for
they're
them?
the ones going to pick, but yes.
Okay,
And they're going to pass legislation tonight, too.
okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the other council members in the chambers? Hearing and seeing none. Oh, Councilwoman Amobian.
Thank you very much. This is just to move them closer when if we secure this building over here? Is that what this is?
No, they're currently parking in there now, but in order to help us with O&M costs, they are now going to start paying. So we had to enter a lease so they can pay us.
Oh, okay.
And they're doing the same thing, bypassing legislation.
Okay, thank you.
And that legislation is being passed this evening, did you say? at
Well, they're
the
going to
county?
take it. I'm not sure it's going to pass.
Oh, you don't?
Consent's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, good enough. Okay, consent is what was called for. And I have a motion from Councilman Kamer for consent, a second by Councilman Hoke. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this passes on the consent agenda, please. Placed on the consent agenda. Number 5, ordinance authorizing Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the replacement and/or upgrade of existing lighting fixtures at Canal Park Stadium and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the lights at Canal Park Stadium are about 22 years old. They no longer produce enough light to meet Major League Baseball standards for play at that park. This ordinance would authorize us to replace those lights with LED fixtures, which would produce enough light to allow play this summer after dark. And Mr. Babby is here from the Rubber Ducks if you have any questions and specifics on the MLB requirements.
Will this be more efficient?
It will be more efficient, certainly.
So energy-wise, this makes good sense. Mr. Babby, I would think that your personality would light up that whole stadium, but if we need to put in better lighting, okay.
Thank you very much.
You
We
have
appre-
the mic, go ahead and tell us what you need us to
Sure,
know.
we appreciate the support, and I'll just share with council, we've been very measured in the requests that we've made from the city since entering into our new lease agreement 7 years ago. Amazing how time has passed that quickly. Lighting is a responsibility of the city in our lease agreement. As the service director said, our lighting is 22 years old. We've failed the lighting test produced by Gould Evans and received a letter from Major League Baseball requiring that the lighting be brought to those standards, and the city's been great partners in exploring various options, and I believe at the service director office's level have come to a great solution, and we're told that it will be in place by opening day, which is what's needed to meet our Major League standards.
And are there any questions, Councilman Fusco?
It's due, obviously, I think, in terms of the, when you consider the age of the structure and the age of the lighting system and recognizing, I mean, this is a very prudent, obvious investment that we have to make. I would recommend, I don't know what the time frame is, but I'd recommend
Suspension of the rules would be appreciated because
I'd
of the
recommend that.
timing. This has to be done by April 4th.
Right, yeah, so I'd recommend suspension of rules. I'd like my name added, thank you.
Okay, I have a motion for suspension of the rules. and I have a second. And I see that I have Mr. Kilby's hand up. Mr. Kilby?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Moore, you said the lights don't come up to major league standards? I thought this was minor league baseball.
They are bound by the major league standards on their lighting. I say if you have questions, specific questions about MLB requirements, Mr. Babby can answer those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers the question.
Councilman Neal? And please let us know who you're directing your question to.
Thank you. This question is to our service department. Are we securing the contractor to improve the lights? Is there any chance where we can leverage this to possibly get a deal with the work that we have to do over at Summit Lake by any chance? I know this is an emergency, but do we have to send this out for bid, or do we already have a provider? And can we try to leverage this work to get a deal on Summit Lake?
I think we can look into that for sure.
Okay, thank you, sir.
That's a good point. Mr. Babby, opening day is April the 14th?
Yep, Thursday, April 4th.
April the 4th. What's the weather going to be like?
Hopefully warmer than this week.
Okay, all righty, we're going to go for it. We had a motion and a second. All in favor of suspension of the rules signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this passes and is placed on the agenda with suspension of the rules.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, number 6, ordinance authorizing Director of Public Service to enter into a contract without the formality of advertising for bids with the Ohio Edison Company for the detailed engineering, material procurement, and construction services related to removal and relocation of Ohio Edison's Darrow West Akron transmission facilities and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, down at the water reclamation facility, we're in the process of designing a new headworks project that will begin probably next year at some point. As part of that project, we need to relocate 3 Ohio Edison poles, and that relocation is going to be at our expense, and this ordinance will allow us to start that process to relocate those poles so that we can go ahead and construct this building that we need to construct.
So it is of time essence here. We're being prudent by looking ahead, knowing what's going to be needed, and getting everything in order so that we can move forward in a timely
Yes,
manner.
we've worked with Edison. We've actually negotiated a price that's somewhat less than what they had originally told us, but they will have to complete the work because it is their poles. But we need to get started on relocating them.
And that is 3 poles?
3 poles.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Any questions from other members of council? Councilwoman Sims.
Thank you. Just quickly, what's the funding source? SCH?
Sewer capital. This is part of the Waterways Renewed program.
Sewer capital.
Sewer capital fund. We're building a new headworks project, so for the sewer plant.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, what is your pleasure?
Consent would be fine on this.
No.
I'm sorry, suspension of the rules. Favorable report would be appreciated.
I have a motion from Councilman Kamer. I have a second from Councilman Fusco. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will go on as with suspension of the rules. Okay, number 7, ordinance approving and confirming the appointments of Mayor Daniel Horrigan, Councilman Zach Milkovich, and Director Diane Miller-Dawson as trustees to the Summit Akron Solid Waste Management Authority Board, and Jim Hall, Rob Harris, and Cindy Donnell as their respective alternates for terms ending February the 28th, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
So these are our appointments to the Solid Waste Authority Board. This would be until 2022.
May I ask how many meetings there are, or do we
Boy,
know? I think you have Diane back there. She might know.
I'm going to have to defer to Ms. Dawson on that.
shouted it out. So on any given year, there are 10 or 11 meetings.
10 or 11 meetings. And how long do those last, those meetings?
It typically depends. It can be, a quick meeting is an hour, but we've been known to go 90 minutes. There are also committee meetings associated throughout the year as well.
So it is a definite commitment?
It is a commitment.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I open the floor up to any questions from members of the committee. Councilman Kamer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Are these reappointments?
Yes.
Well, what concerns me, I know Madam Chair just asked about the 10 to 11 meetings and the commitment, and we just had, I mean, one of the colleagues of mine are going to be appointed to this, and I know there was a local newspaper article in regards to his job performance and some of the unreturned phone calls and some of the residents that are upset with his work. Do you think this is in the best interest?
Excuse me, I believe you're out of order. Excuse me, you don't have the floor right now, Councilwoman Sims. Mr. Kamer does.
Okay, so moving forward, that's my concern, obviously from a local article, and then I know, you know, we just passed the increase to our sanitation fees over the summer, and I know this individual was against that. Just wondering the decision in regards to this, if you're able to give any.
These are reappointments, so, I mean, it's council's authority.
Right. Well, that's just my concern because of the local article I just read, and I'm just concerned in regards to attendance and making sure that we get the proper representation on that. So, thanks, Madam Chair.
Would it be, you're welcome. Would it be possible to get in attendance so that if we were to take time on this, we could possibly look and see how the attendance was, so this would be something that, with facts, we could address?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm more than happy to listen to anybody else, but what I have just asked for is that attendance was shown so that we could prove or disprove anything that's out there. Wait, let me make sure that the committee, they don't have any other comments. Tara Mosley Samples.
Madam Chair, with all due respect, this is so disrespectful. Well, I mean, we have to keep a line of professionalism around this chambers, period. I know we are all in an election cycle, we all got stuff going on, but this is not the time nor the place. We knew this was coming in on Friday. If there was an issue or a question, how come there was no email sent or text messages sent if there was a concern? The Beacon Journal writes articles about all of us. So all of us are called into question at some point, including the mayor. So every time they write something negative about us, do we have to worry about a colleague coming in and saying that we're not doing our job? In that case, we're all in trouble. We're all going to have something said about us around this. This is out of line, this disrespectful.
Thank you. Councilwoman Amobian.
This is totally out of order, and as chair, you should have stopped the chairman from bringing this to the floor. This is a Beacon Journal article. It has nothing to do with protocol. If you want to know the attendance of somebody at a committee meeting, all you have to do is request the attendance reports. And if you're going to request it for one person, you should request it for all committees that we are appointed to. This is totally out of order. It should not have been entertained at all, and it's wrong to do it.
Thank you.
And I understand. My question is, why did we bring all of the other gossip that was in the newspaper to the floor? There was a lot of gossip in the newspaper about all council members, a number of them. Moneypenny, when he was president, and there were council members who participated in him being sworn in as mayor of this city, and everybody knew what he had done. No one talked about that, and they should have stopped him from being sworn in. There was a total embarrassment to this whole city, but no one stopped that. That should have been brought to the floor for all of us to entertain, because it was so embarrassing, and there were council members who knew about that. There are other council members who have broken other rules, and you haven't brought that to the floor. You don't bring gossip to this chamber, and that's inappropriate, and it should have been stopped by either you or the president. This should not have been brought to this committee. and that is wrong.
Thank you. Councilman Neal.
Yes, Madam Chair, I just want to say I concur with my two colleagues. I hope that as we go forward, we could be more professional and do our job. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else? Okay. Councilman Kamer.
Madam Chair, thank you. And I don't think it was gossip. I'm just asking to make sure we're making the right decision. As me being a legislator, I have every right to ask that question. I've been appointed to a few committees by the former mayor and when Mayor Fusco was the mayor and the current mayor. Any council member can ask about that attendance record or if I'm best qualified. So that's the whole reasoning of this. So I stand by my questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Councilman Kilby.
If we're going to single out a member of this board, we should get the attendance of everybody that's on the board. Can we do that? So we can have some basis of comparison? Can we get everybody's attendance?
I don't have any problem with asking for that.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, and I think that probably would be a good idea when we talk about adding to boards that we do bring up the attendance for the future. Mr. Kilby, Councilman Kilby, since you made the recommendation, how far back do you want to go? A year, 2 years?
Probably the entire period, no individuals on the committee or whatever it is.
Well, but wait, but you said for all committees. So would 2 years be fair enough to go back? And which committees are we talking about?
We're talking about this solid waste.
Oh, this particular committee?
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
I'm talking about.
Okay.
Not this, we're not talking about our committees.
Not about
here.
all committees,
Isn't
just
that the
about,
issue?
just about the solid waste one?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
That's what I want to
That's fine.
go back.
2 years, 3 years?
4 years, I mean,
Well,
until
Councilman
about
Kilby, I
January
mean,
2006, 2016 says. So.
for this term, is that what would you say for this term that we're in right now? Okay, good enough. Do we have that down so that we can get that information? Okay, thank you. All right, is there anything else to come before this committee?
Madam
Okay,
Chair, are
we
you
need to make a-
referring
we
this
need-
piece of legislation?
No, we haven't made a motion yet.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion for time?
No.
Oh,
Oh, this particular thing.
Councilman Kilby, we're going to go for a motion here, but
I thought you said anything else to come before this committee.
oh, well, I apologize. Let me get back to a motion for this particular item.
Okay.
Is there a motion? Okay, Councilman Fusco has a motion to refer, second by Councilman Hoke. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be referred. Okay, is there anything else to come before this committee?
Yes.
Councilman Kilby.
Well, I think this would be the appropriate place and committee to talk a little bit about the snow removal program, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
I
But could I just stop you for 1 second, if that would be okay? I want you to know that I'm sure that everyone around this horseshoe got a number of texts, emails, and calls. And I will tell you, as chairman of the Public Service Committee, I had asked for a report so that the committee could dissect that report of the last snow event and what we possibly, what areas we missed the mark on.
Well, what I would
But
like-
having said that, and I do want you to continue in just a moment, but having said that, when I came in this morning, leadership spoke to me and said that they will be asking for something themselves on behalf of council.
Well, I just think we have a right, as council, to know a little bit more than what we read in the newspaper.
Right.
And that's where I got most of my information, since a lot of this is shut down. The one thing, I've been a councilman many years, and we always had, members of council always had a direct line to the snow center. And I want to know, do we have another number? I heard somebody leaked it to social media, so you had to shut it down. It wasn't me, I assure you, but can we get another phone number so we can, I think that's a very valuable thing, and it's, a lot of times, somebody misses a street, so people call us, so we can call the snow center. I mean, we're not telling anybody at the snow center what to do. That's not our role. We just ask and tell, it's a very valuable, we've got 10 ward council people, 3 at-large council people. We get calls. When they can't get through on 311, they call us. And we had no way of knowing how to answer these questions, and I would request that you ask Jim Hall to step up here too, because he's in charge of Public Works.
Thank you so much. I did hear everything you had to say, Councilman Kilby.
I'm capable of answering any
Okay.
questions that Mr. Kilby has. Mr. Hall is not going to come up here and sit and get grilled by Mr. Kilby. I will be grilled. And I have some information. If you guys want to hear the information that I have, I'll be happy to present it.
I think we probably will. I am going to ask our president to please tell us what you are planning to do, because I, as a chairperson, had an idea of what I wanted to do. However, our leadership has a good plan here, too.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Just wanted to make the announcement in light of the city's response to the winter storm last week. As Council President, I have established the Akron City Council Snow and Ice Task Force. Okay, and I want Akron City Council to know that Mayor Horgan and the administration will be working very closely with the task force and are in complete support of the task force. The task force has been charged with reviewing procedures regarding how the city responds to snow and ice events and recommending improvements where appropriate. It will also review, but not limited to, updating the snow and ice control manual, reevaluating our contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation, optimizing staffing and equipment levels, and etc. This task force will be comprised of 5 members of residents from our community. We'll also have 5 members of the administration, and it will also have 5 members of this body, Akron City Council. We are working on a formal press release that we will have available for council on tonight, which will share the appointments of that task force. That task force has been charged with coming forth with some recommendations no later than March 1st of 2019. The task force will first come back to this body, Akron City Council, and give a formal report. Akron City Council will approve, if so, the report provided. Once approved by Akron City Council, this body, Akron City Council will give a formal report to the residents of Akron. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else? Councilman Kilby.
I want some answers now, not March 1st.
Well,
and I just want to say my experience in the snowstorm. I understand we got a lot of snow. You know, we haven't had a foot of snow for, I don't know, 10 years. And I was out all weekend helping people. I called the snow center Monday morning, and I asked the dispatcher, when are they going to start the residential plowing? And I was told, we're working on the plan. It's like going into battle without a plan. Because we were, prior administrations, we were given detailed maps of our ward. We were always given input of where the secondary should be. I haven't heard any of that in the last few years. Haven't got a map, haven't got a plan. So I think we went into this here blindly, and there's no excuse for not planning. Okay? There's no excuse for not being prepared. And the workers did a really good job. I'm not criticizing the rank and file drivers. It's the leaders. And it's not us. It's not the council. We're a legislative body. This is the administration. And the chief administrator of the city, Daniel M. Horrigan, was nowhere to be found when it got really bad. Where was he? Where was he? Where was he on Tuesday? Does anybody know? Does anybody want to answer? Now, where's the deputy mayor and the spokesperson? You know, we elected the mayor, not a deputy mayor. They're not elected officials. Daniel M. Horrigan is the elected leader of this city, and where was he on Tuesday? Does anybody know? Nobody wants to answer? He was in Washington, D.C. He flew out of town for the mayor's conference. And you know what? I'm angry. You know why? My people are angry. And I was elected to express their anger. It's nothing personal. It's nothing personal. But that's what I'm doing. I'm expressing their anger. And they had a right to be angry. The city apologized, and that's good. What do you do when you screw up totally except apologize? And that's good. And it's good to have a plan so it never happens again. But we only get a snowstorm of that magnitude once in a while. And we'll probably not get another one, hopefully. But there was, public service was not prepared for this. The trucks were not serviced properly. The drivers were not trained properly. Okay? And I'm not here to defend the administration. That's your job. It's nothing personal.
Mr. Moore.
Yeah, if I could. I'm going to start with
Get
the...
another number.
Wait a minute.
For us, so we can call the snow center.
I have just
I'd like
asked...
to get another phone number.
Councilman Kilby, I have just asked Mr. Moore to address your concerns. Mr. Moore, you do have
Madam
the
Chair,
floor.
members of the committee, I guess I'm going to start with the good news, if there is any. The wastewater plant, we processed about 242 million gallons last Wednesday after the snow and rain, which is about, last year at this time, we could process 130 million gallons. So the step feed project is working well. It prevented sewage overflow into the river. There were no fatalities or serious injuries that occurred on our primary routes. We were able to handle the storm and maintain safety on our major thoroughfares. In terms of our current snow removal, this is certainly a priority for us because of the speed at which vehicles travel. Now we can go to the other side of the coin. Our entire snow removal team worked 24 hours a day from prior to the storm and through the entire storm. It wasn't enough. We did not get into the residential areas as soon as we should have. The service department, service director made a tactical error in not hiring private contractors immediately during the storm. We should have hired them immediately. We need to take a hard look at our operations and establish a new set of plowing protocols. We have begun the process of breaking down the entire logic, priorities, operational protocols related to our snow removal program. Until this plan is fully developed, we will utilize private contractors to supplement our fleet as necessary. Our goal here is to never put our citizens into a situation like we experienced last week. And I believe with the private contractor help, we will certainly not get into that situation again, and we will pull the trigger as soon as we need them to help us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I first make sure that all the committee members have an opportunity, then I'm happy to go there. Was there any committee members? Okay. Oh, Councilman Kamer, I apologize.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I got a couple things to say. I just want to say thank Chris Luddle for and Jim Hall for putting me with a 33-and-a-half-year veteran Monday morning driving around. It was a good experience. I've done it before, but we spent about 4.5 hours out on the roads plowing, and he was a good guy, and I want to make sure you let him know that. Also, Chris was able to come to my ward meeting on Wednesday, and I thank him for coming at the last minute in his attire that he was wearing because he was out there shoveling around sewers to clear them of snow. So I thank you, Chris, for that. Now, moving forward, I want to thank Marilyn Keith and obviously President Somerville for the task force. I agree with it almost 100%. The only thing I'm asking is I would like to see if we can have one resident, and I don't have to pick that resident, but we really need to have one representative from each ward in our city be part of this task force. I know you said 5 members of council, 5 members of the administration, and then 5 members of the community. I really would like you to extend that to 10, because this was a snowstorm that I believe, since I've been down here for 8 years, that the phone calls, the emails, the messages I got was just unbelievable, you know, because we did not do a good job. So my request moving forward, obviously, I would like you to extend that to having 10 members of the task force, please, because I believe each ward, the residents need to be involved in this, just because of what we went through. So I would really, really would appreciate if you could do that. So that's it. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Milkovich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate you. Mr. Moore, I spoke to you yesterday. I got a phone call. The snowstorm just didn't stop. We got one on Saturday. I got a phone call from a very angry gentleman on Cutler Parkway. I called the mayor directly. You called me, and I told you what was going on up in the Ward 10. And then you proceeded to tell me about that the 311 was down, that it was a terrorist attack. I understood that, but I didn't understand it on a Monday. Nobody from the administration let this chamber, this council people know that. I got a call, and they told me that our mayor was in Washington, D.C. at a conference. I looked it up this morning. You can tell me if this is correct or not. Tuesday, taken on January 22nd, 2019. There it is. It's a committee. I believe it's the Water Committee. Was he or was he not? Here on Tuesday, when 14 school buses were stranded, when elderly people could not get to the hospital if they need to. I got a call on last Saturday, even before the snowfall started, from a gentleman on Lorraine. He has kidney dialysis. He could not get through. He can get through to me. I put my personal cell phone for the last 10 years on every piece of legislation I put out there. You got a direct link to me. I went around the ward, those men and women who actually do the heavy lifting, and we need more of them. That street was done. The frustration of the citizen on Wednesday, I was on Fox 8 News from Seminole, Plum. Those streets are horrific. There's a reason why they call it Goodyear Heights. They're hills. I thought it was, and I know it's more important to be here in a case of an emergency, and that's what it was. Was he or was he not here in Akron on Tuesday, or was he in Washington, D.C.? Because that conference started on Tuesday and went to Friday. Our former mayor, Don Pasquale, also was down there. Got pictures of that too. I want some answers.
Councilman Fusco, Councilman Kilby, and then Councilwoman Sims, then Councilman Neal.
political season is upon us. To say that we're not going to make this personal and so on and so forth, I'm finding more and more that it seems to be becoming personal with regards to the attacks on the mayor. The thing of it is typically, you don't necessarily see the President of the United States in battle right there. I'm sure the mayor was in constant contact with the service director's office and was provided daily updates and knew exactly what was happening with regards to the snow event. The administration had the intestinal fortitude to step up and say, we got to do better, we can do better. And that is exactly a classy move. It was a difficult situation without question, but I just find it very unfortunate that here we have a situation where we're going to learn from this and move on with the announcement of the task force that's been formed. I'm just asking that at this point that we really stop and discontinue these personal attacks and talk about the real issues at hand. Thank you.
Councilman Kilby, I know you want to speak, but I have to tell you, I have to let others that are sitting around Horseshoe that haven't spoken yet, that they have their opportunity also. Okay. I think it was, I don't even know how the order went, but I think it was Councilman Neal, then Councilman. Okay. Councilman Neal.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to thank personally Chris. I could thank you too, John, but Chris was the one who I was bugging most of the time. And this is, I think if we, as a body, legislative and administrative, learn that there is a difference between the political process and politics, because too many times politics takes place down here. The questions that were asked were legitimate questions. But too many times, politics takes place down here. Now, these are some questions that I've asked that I think all of us need. And then I want to let council know that we had an opportunity to be prepared. There's an African proverb that states, one doesn't wait till they're on the battlefield to prepare their shield. There's a piece of legislation that we'll talk about in rules that talked about organizing our wards with citizens advisory councils to help us holistically in what we do, but especially in areas like this. But this is what I would like. I understand the committee, but this body right now is the one that has been asked questions by our residents that we need some understanding on. And these are the questions that were in the email, and they shared with me that they were going to get me the answers, but of course all of our emails are down. So I want to state them for the record here. One I asked was for just an understanding of the 59 routes and how they're supposed to be ran. Then an actual map of the 59 routes and how they were ran. Because I tell you, I had people calling me all the time saying, I need a truck over here, I need a truck over here. Well, I understand this. If I could use this analogy, it's like the quarterback stepping up to the line, calling a pass play, and then once the ball is hiked, somebody says, no, I want you to run the ball. You can't do that. So whatever plan we had, we know now that it didn't run. If you use the sports analogies, you find out sometimes the plan you had didn't work. But I want to know about the plan, how is it supposed to be ran, and how did it actually run? Secondly, I would like to see, from my understanding, an understanding of the snow and ice removal guide, because I saw outlined in the beacon, one of the questions people were asking me all the time, hey, I see a truck coming down my street and the plow is up. It's not dropping any salt. Or they plowed right to the end of the street and then they left. What's going on? And I noticed some questions. The one question I think I was able to answer, they were saying, hey, why is a truck sitting idling down at the end of my street? Well, I said, thinking in my head, they may be on break. It doesn't make any sense for them to drive all the way back to the center, but we can help our customers if we have those answers. I'd like to know what the our union agreement is with 1360. So if there's some things that, need to, because that was an emergency. I know we have things where people sometimes can't work, but I mean, so we can have that understanding. And then the big thing, and I think Mr. Kilby mentioned this and Mr. Milkovich mentioned this, what was our emergency management plan? I mean, because thank God that nobody did die. On White Pine, there's a kidney dialysis place. Folks are going there all times of the morning, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. Those folks weren't able to, how would we respond like that? Appreciate the committee, but that should be something we should be able to see now. What's our emergency management plan in the future? But to this body that's asking about us picking people out of the wards, for 2 years something has been sitting in front of us about establishing ward leadership councils to assist us as council people. So we'll have a chance to evaluate that in rules. But on this body, I just want on the record, those questions were asked when we were able to pull up our emails. I may be forgetting one. But I think as a team, we're all on this team together. The questions are legitimate. I think this season makes some feel that they're political, but the questions are legitimate. And all of us are being asked. Because there are questions that all of us are being asked. You may not like the way they're being asked, but there are questions all of us have been asked. Thank you.
Councilwoman Samples.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank Chris and John. I was able to text Chris several times about some trouble spots, and I put a post on Facebook when the snow started immediately, asking residents, specifically for my ward, but a lot more of them came from outside my ward, of streets that had been passed by, and I sent all those streets to Jim. And my residents checked back in with me. Every time a street was done, they checked back in with me. I mean, we still had some work to do with some of our side streets and our no outlets, and I think that really just has to do with maybe bringing in some more subcontractors early on. Or one thing I would like for us to do is maybe have a list like we do with our lawn people, making sure we have a list that we can draw to when we have these issues again, that we can call subcontractors, local subcontractors. I seen quite a few of them, a guy in a red truck with a light on, and he was one of the people that I sent over to you guys, and he checked in on Facebook. Every street he done, he was so excited that he was able to help the city, and he checked in every time he did a street and what street he did. So I think that's a tool that will help us in the future. This is Akron, and it does snow, and it's gonna snow again. So I think having that as a secondary will help, but things happen, and I think that we should learn from this and grow from it, and be able to address things more efficiently next time. But I thank you all for being accessible for me. Thanks.
Councilman Kilby.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First, I want to congratulate the mayor for coming down and facing the, I know it's tough, but, my role as a councilman is not to apologize for your administration or carry water for your administration. I want to say one thing. I'll say this. I appreciate the fact that you have not politicized customer service like the last mayor did. You have never done that. And I'll congratulate Chris Lettle, who's done things for me, and so has John Moore, and that's good. But we're not a team, you understand? This is government. People like these sports metaphors, but it's not a team. You're not the quarterback, and we're not the line. We're the legislative body, you're the executive body of this city government. And part of the problem, we don't have checks and balances, because if everybody, the majority on this side says, well, I'm going to go along with whatever the administration wants, because then nobody runs a candidate against me, and it makes my job easier. That's not good government. There's no checks and balances in that kind of government. I've been down here for almost 23 years, and I have always spoke up for checks and balances and having an independent council. We're not a team. We're government. We're city government, and my job is to express the will of my people. And they're angry, and they want answers. And that's what I'm doing. That's all. Nothing personal. And I would like to get another phone number that you can share with these council members so we can call the Snow Center. Can we do that? Can we get another number for the Snow Center? Because I don't think anybody here gave that number out to social media. I know I didn't. I mean, it could have been hacked or whatever, but we need another number.
Sir.
That's the way I do business still. I'm not texting people every minute. I like to talk on the phone.
Mr. Kilby,
Somebody.
I think he would like to reply, if that's okay with you.
That's all.
I think there's some confusion about what goes on in the Snow Center.
This is nothing personal.
I just want to talk about the Snow Center a minute. We have 2 people in there, some male, some female, but we have 2 people, okay? And they're dispatching 52 trucks, okay? They're getting repairs, they're getting calls on the radio from APD, okay? I told them to turn the phone off when the residents start overflowing, because if they didn't answer the phone, it wouldn't have worked, and they weren't getting any work done. I don't have the number to the Snow Center. We haven't issued a new number. We're going to look at that, okay? So I understand, but maybe that's not the right way, okay? So if you send it to me, a request, we're going to take care of it. But for a council person or a cabinet member or an engineering person calling the Snow Center and directing those guys to do something, okay, well, it's going to go.
Councilman Kilby, let him speak, please.
We are going to look at that process, but that person in there is overwhelmed, whether he's working or she's working 12 or 16 hours to take a phone call about this street or that street. Because believe me, by Sunday morning, we knew we were going to do every street. We knew it, okay?
Thank you. Councilman Fusco.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's very obvious and it's fair that there's frustration from council, frustration from the community. That's very fair. However, though, you know, figuring out and working together to improve the response is the way to go. And not to personalize, again, I understand that we're not personalizing, but it sure does sound like it. Again, I would just ask that we maintain a professional approach to this. Again, it's fair to be frustrated, it's fair, but we have proposed some steps to move forward, and that's the way we're going to improve, and that's the way and maybe the old ways aren't the best ways. And I don't think we should forget or discount the fact that this was a snowstorm of a pretty profound impact on our community. I don't think we should discount that whatsoever. And so that's another piece of it, but just to know that moving forward, that plan will be in place, and the city will put its best feet forward.
Thank you. Mayor?
Do you mind?
I do not mind at all.
Thank you. I think in the 3+ years I've been down here, I'm still not sold on the neighborhood advisory committees. I think Mr. Neal and I have agreed maybe on 3 things, and this being one of them, because he's asking the same questions that I start asking as soon as the snow starts flying. So how we attack these things, and I know there's a lot of hand-wringing going on, and there's a lot of teeth gnashing. The fact is that you had an operation that was executing a flawed strategy, and we had not taken a look at that in a long time. And that doesn't disparage the work that went out there, and literally the 16-hour shifts that people were pulling 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I had been down the Snow Center, you know, at least 2 or 3 times, and in constant contact with, you know, all of our personnel, and being able to clear these streets. Now, had we changed it for a while? No, but there's some legitimate questions that I want this committee and this task force to look at, and we've already have a couple of ideas that we'd like to implement at some particular point. And Mr. Kilby, you make a couple of points. None of them very good, but I'm not asking anybody to be on a team at all. I think you discount the fact that there just may be some pretty good ideas coming from this administration and the previous administration. I'm not done yet. Let me finish first, okay? And then whether you want to sign on to them or not, that's not necessarily my concern. My concern is to promote an agenda that helps the city grow and helps it deliver world-class city services, period. With the budget and the constraints that we have, we're going to get to that particular point. I know we are, because we're going to change the way that we do it. I don't know which way we're going to do it, because I think we have to ask ourselves some tough questions. One, is there enough equipment out there to do it? How are the drivers trained? What do the routes look like? You asked some great questions about there's 59 routes. What are they doing and how are they doing it? Listen, I had that question too. Why is a plow not up? Plowing is a verb. I get it. And those guys get it too. We have to go through those questions and come up with some recommendations to say, this is how we're going to do a little bit better. There's nobody that's been harder on my administration over the last 5 days than me. And they're not happy with me on some of these things either. We're asking those hard questions. I just don't have a definitive answer for the committee nor the council yet, but we'll get there. And we will perform better next time. Nobody wants us to be down here asking hard questions. You're going to ask them, and I'm fine with that. We signed up for it. I have no problem with it. We'll come back with you with a better answer, and I'll stick to my New Year's resolution. Because the first one is I'm going to let policy and not politics dictate the level of this city. Whether it's here, and you make a great point. You make a great point, and we agree again, that's 4 times in 4 years, is that this body and us should be about, in this particular room, about the city, about the people in the city of Akron, period. That's all I have.
Councilman Kilby.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I agree with most of that. You know, you guys come up with some good ideas, but so do we. And I don't see where our ideas are entertained very much. You are a ward councilman, I know that. You walked the streets of your ward. You knew the problems. I mean, nobody knows the ward better than ward councilman. At least if you do it the way I do it. Now, politics, I mean, is good government. The two cannot be separated. We're individuals, we're human beings, we're carrying out policy and passing legislation, and it's really not personal. I'm just doing my job, and I think you're trying to do your job, but there's a fundamental little bit of friction in all levels of American democracy, and that's called checks and balances. And this is how things get worked out. A synthesis of good ideas from us and from you. And hopefully, and we're not a team, but guess what? We all want the same goal. We all want this city to move forward and have good services, Now, I appreciate the fact that you apologized. I mean, that's good. But we need some answers now. I want to know why I can't call the snow center and tell somebody, hey, you missed a street, or when it comes down to like redoing the routes, we used to have some input, when I say we, council members, about maybe this should be a secondary, because there's a hill here. Or I don't see where the director of public service will listen to me. I don't know what the experience of the other council members have been, but I think I understand my role as a councilman is not, I cannot tell one city worker what to do. I can ask, and that's what I've always done. And calling down there at the snow center, I don't call 5 or 6 times a day. I usually wait till maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when it's calmed down, and I'll call. But I just think we need to get another number so we can call down there. And we know things that maybe the driver don't even know. But no, I was never, and I rode with snow plows too back in the 90s. We had some big snowstorms, and Jeff can attest to that. And I'm not sure they did a much better job, but I rode with snow plow drivers, and these guys really work hard. They should be commended for what they do. What I was doing during the whole storm is helping people dig out in my ward. Since they didn't get around to plowing a lot of the residential streets till Wednesday or Thursday, this light snow had turned into slush. By Wednesday, temperatures rose, it was raining. So then what happened, and you know what happened, they threw a wake of snow, slush, and they were blocking people's driveways. I'm getting these calls from these little old ladies in my ward saying, Mr. Kilby, I can't get out of my driveway and I have to go to the doctor. Can you get somebody from the city to do something? And I said, I don't think there's anybody that can do that, but I'll come out and do it. And I did that, and I don't need a pat on the back. I would have done that whether I was a councilman or not for some of these little old ladies. But I'm just saying, I'm expressing the frustration of my people, and I think that's what a ward councilman should do.
Thank you, Councilman Kilby. Is there any other comments? I would like to just say, Councilman Milkovich.
Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for coming down. And we need to work together. It's not about politics. It's about the people. And that's why I got in this line of business, is to help people. And we do need a plan together to create that plan. Now, we're putting our good men and women who are overworked and overstressed in dangerous situation. Wednesday morning, because of the holidays, the garbage was delayed a day. I get up early in the morning. Since I was a factory worker over 20 plus years. And I happened to look outside across the street, and my neighbor was getting towed out, and one of our trucks, our garbage trucks, came by, and where I live on Kramer and Hillbish, there's ditches. He fell into the ditch, and I thought, oh my God, is he ever going to get out? The tow truck driver moved away. He kept going back and forth, rocking. He got out of my next door neighbor, he tore his yard up. Then he came across my apron into my ditch, tore it up, got out, and I said, thank God nobody got hurt and no damage to that truck. And this is how great our men and women in the city of Akron are. The supervisor came maybe about an hour later, took a picture. I went out to talk to him. Mr. Milkovich, apologize. I'm sorry. I'm upset. I'm glad that nobody got hurt. My yard, I can fix. He said, sir, can I plow all this debris off your driveway? I said, no, I'll do it. He goes, no, sir, let me do it. We live in the greatest city in America, Akron, Ohio. We need to work together. It's not about politics.
Thank you. Whoa. I don't think any of us want to go through another week. Any of us want to go through another week like we had last week. I think we know it's a basic service. I think we know we missed the target. I think we know we can do better, and I know for sure that we will do better, and I believe everyone around this table will champion the better. I'm going to tell you, Councilman Kilby, if you have something that you do not feel will be heard from you, please let me know. I'm happy to, we're all here for the same reason, and it's to serve. And so I'm compelled to tell another story. I've been listening to stories this last hour, but I'm compelled to tell you, we did we missed the mark in a lot of places. But let me tell you one thing. I had a customer, a resident, who I called back, who had is on medication for his kidneys. He could not get out of his drive to go get it. He tried, and he got stuck, and a neighbor pushed him back in. So he had called me, I turned in the street, but in the meantime, he called the mayor's office. And I think it's really important to know, none of this fell on deaf ears. We all had our ears burning and still are burning. And so I called back to check on the gentleman, and he said to me, do you know what the mayor did? And he wasn't real happy when I'm talking to him. And I said, no, what? He said, he sent 2 people to my door to make sure I got what I needed, and that I got anything else that I needed. Now, with all the horror stories that are out there, let's remember that we recognize we fell short. We can do better, we will do better. It is our responsibility, and everybody's on that side too, to champion better. And I thank all of you that took part. I'm so sorry for all my colleagues who went through the week that we all went through. But that's our job. And our job is to serve. And any of us who had something to say today, we're reiterating the cause. Now let's put the footwork into making that change. And with that, is there anything else? Motion to adjourn. A second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Public utilities, we'll start in 1 minute.
Russ, I'm gonna turn it over to you. I'm gonna read it in, but I'm gonna give it to you.
Oh, never mind, we have Parks and Rec.
Thank you.
Sorry, Rob.
Okay, next we got Park and Rec, followed by Rules, and then Public Utilities. We're way off schedule, so I don't know what else to tell you. Yeah.
Extend it to 10. I know it's more people, but we really got to listen to the people. And I don't want to handpick nobody. It's just, I think it makes us look better.
They said something out of class, tell us what you want. Well, yeah, okay, I'll tell you. No, I want something here. I shouldn't, they don't plan this. They plan it for, they make a software, they plan it for. This is going into my 10th year, and I ain't doing this. Park and Rec will meet in 2 minutes. Park and Rec will meet in 2 minutes.
What you tell her she gotta fly home? Tell her I gotta Madam President, I want you to know I've been here almost 4 years. I didn't even know that door went there. Don't
Hey, Mr. Clerk. Yeah, we can go ahead and start. All I want it on the record. So we can go ahead and start, because all it is talking about the process that we've been talking about for a while. So we can go ahead and call Park and Rec meeting to order, please. What we're going to discuss is going to impact every council member, but since we do not have any minutes, we will table that and go right into the discussion. We've had discussion about just reviewing Park and Rec overall. Of course, 2 weeks ago now, we had a fine presentation from the administration. Next week, they will present to us on their plan, hopefully for Lot 3, as well as the neighborhood parks. The purpose of this meeting is, for the past few years, at least, have been talking about the inequitable planning as far as concerts in the park. Gave everybody a book a while back. The city has concerts planned in Hardesty Park, that's Ward 8, Firestone Park, Shady Side, Patterson Park, Goodyear Heights. Those wards that are missed are 3, 4, and 5, and of course 1. But 1 is kind of self-sufficient. They plan there, they don't wait on us. They have some of the best entertainment in the city that they play in. We received an email a couple weeks back asking those of us that don't have concerts to play in. Since I've been on council, I know have lobbied and fought for us to have our events, and so we get one event, I think, over the past, 2 of my colleagues are here, we get one event, but the purpose of this is for 3, 4, and 5 to have planned concerts just like the other parts of the community, so that they're published in the information that goes out. Residents know far enough in advance about these events. Now, I have in my hand, and if you haven't got one, I'll make sure that you can get one, an equity tool that I'm asking that we start using whenever we do policy. The reason why I was hoping some of our colleagues were here was, without us having to spend more money, every ward gets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 7 events, not counting the symphony and the ballet and some of those, so they're up to like 10 or 12 events. I would like to ask my colleagues, how many of those events would they like to give up so that 3, 4, and 5 could at least have 5 events in their ward? So folks aren't here. Mr. Valley's going to come, and Mr. Hardy, I believe, are going to come next week talking about their plan. By next week, we need to have a plan for how we're going to be equitable in our recreation department as far as having concerts in the ward. Now, we've been talking about this for a while, so that's it. Don't want to hold us up. Just wanted on the record that next week, going to be asking colleagues to decide if Mr. Valley and them can't, because you may know what event is most important in your ward. What can be given up so that we can shift those dollars to wards that don't have events. So that's it, Mr. Clerk. Thank you.
Pardon me? Did you order some trustee? Yeah. Oh, that's nice, cool. I told him between 3 and 4.
There's a thicker book that goes to that whole piece that we'll be looking at, because it addresses everything. We talk about healthcare, we talk about, of course, economic opportunity. And that's a tool that can be leveraged with the report all the way.
Hey, Sarah, do you have a quorum for the meeting? Sarah, can you see if Joe is back there? Okay, thank you.
Utilities on our standing committees, so that's why it was.
What's that? Rules is next.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, rules is next. Let me go find the committee. Let me go find the committee. I don't know.
I would imagine, I imagine that you got people on both sides who are mad because they're not on the task force. Well, I know that's good. We got one lucky break. It's possible, I don't know if you have this checked out already, whether you can just do the task force by your decree or whatever, or do you have to have legislation that you, good. Well, so you're just gonna decree it, okay, because you don't have to, because I just want to tell you, Russ is sitting there mumbling to himself saying, it's gotta be voted on by council. And I was remembering, I think when I did the Complete Streets Commission, I might have had some legislation that Mike sponsored, he was the president. I mean, and we did it that way. Now, if you can do it, that's even better, that's less mess. You put it as legislation. But we thought, oh, okay, yeah, okay. No.
It's rules first, then utilities. But I need you.
Yeah. Hey, Ellen, I just want to make sure of something, because Russ was mumbling about this. She can just do the task force without any legislation.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
They're not creating, the recommendations are not
Because I think when we did complete fiscal, I had Mike do the, it was creating a law, putting codes, creating a law. That was the focus. This is not going to create a law, it's going to create a recommendation. Okay, very good, okay. All right, I get it. Okay.
Yeah, and like you said, the applicant has to take his,
Yeah. The benefit of that is, if it does get screwed up at the end of the show, there are other citizens on it. I said something, either way, I can go either way, but, because I brought up to Jeff, I think, or you earlier, I don't know what, it wasn't you, maybe, yeah. Just so, that's for show, that's for show. Yeah. Yeah, so that the citizens would, well, he could still say, I'll find somebody in my ward that, okay. Right. That's perfect. That's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah, Milkovich, last time it was symbolic issue. It was mayor, I was actually, I had to go, I ran back in, I was going to say that, but I thought that the mayor decided to ignore it, but Doug could make that no big issue. But where is he? Where was he? And everybody knows the reality he's in constant contact with them, whether he's sitting in his office or whether he's in Washington.
I'd like to call the Rules Committee to order. We have Fusco here, Hoke, and myself. Okay. And once again, we will approve the minutes from our last meeting when things are up and going better for us. So having said that, we have one piece that's been on the agenda for quite a while, and that is, let me read it. I apologize that I didn't have it out here and ready to go. Mr. Clerk, do you have it in front of you that you might? The one piece that's on rules, that's been on rules for quite some time.
Neighborhood advisory?
Yeah.
Okay. This is an ordinance from June 16, 2017. Ordinance amending and/or supplementing Title III, Chapter 31 of the Akron Code of Ordinances to enact Article 3, Neighborhood Advisory Associations, Section 31.43 and 31.47, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Actually, as you started to read it, I found it, but I appreciate that. Okay. I would like to turn this over now to the originator of this piece, which would be Councilman Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe there was a concern regarding the legislation as to the exact definition of appointment. Now, we have committees, because committees are to help vet whatever comes in. I don't know if the committee has ever moved on anything as far as hearings, investigations, asking the law department to come in and share. The basic premise of this legislation is to help us better serve our overall constituency. We have, if we look in our wards, many of our wards are starting to organize in and of on their own, but there isn't any synergy between how they are organized. And we just spoke about this last incident with the snowstorm, about how if we had a way of engaging our citizens and mobilizing them to address this issue. Some communities were organized in and of themselves. I saw it happening on email with Nextdoor and some other things, and just some emails that I'm in. Others weren't as efficient. So if Mr. Moore and Mr. Leto wanted to find out how to engage a neighborhood to maybe mobilize some folks with snow blowers, snow plows, or just engage that neighborhood to make sure that, hey, where are the seniors that may be locked into their communities? We don't have any structure to really engage our neighborhoods. Now, the premise of this legislation when it came in was so that our residents could directly engage us and help us develop better policy and better programs to engage our community. It's to build, we have the Neighborhood Assistance Department, but we're not building that out to really be able to empower the residents, the neighborhood, to be able to help us as legislators and help the administration truly move our communities forward. There are examples of communities that, like I said, are organizing on their own. Ward 1 was organized before it even had before it was even Ward 1. It had citizens groups that were throwing events, doing different things. They were organized. I understand in Goodyear Heights they have a group. I believe I'm fortunate to have some strong block clubs. There's a part of Ward 8 that has even branded themselves as Fairlawn Heights and organized and created their own neighborhood association. But as a city, what have we done to create this infrastructure so that we can better leverage our collective assets? The whole purpose of this was, one, to bring the legislation in so that we could create the dialogue. Now, on my own, I have given this legislation to just about every group that I mentioned, except for probably the group in Fairlawn Heights. Has given one contact person to legislation and just asked them, hey, look at it, comment on it, let's tear it apart. How can we form something that works? I'm going to use this example of how powerful this is. One of the greatest investments that this city made was the University Park Alliance. Some $6 million+ went there. The only remnant from that investment that's left is the neighborhood association that has spun now to be a part of the work that the Well is doing. If we're leaders and we see that there's a void, why don't we provide the infrastructure for our residents to be able to channel their collective energies in to better serve our communities. That's that's the sole purpose of this legislation. You know, it's kind of frustrating, almost 2 years, excuse me, 1.5 going on 2 years, and we haven't even had the healthy dialogue about it. That's what our committees are supposed to do. So I've asked that someone from the law department be here to talk. The premise is the mayor needs to appoint someone, needs to make all appointments. That doesn't work in this case. This is trying to create a vehicle for organic leadership from the grassroots up. Now, it identifies some key people that we don't have any say on, like it identifies, it gives opportunity for student leadership by having whoever the student council president is in that school. In some schools, we'll have both 2 wards, like we share Bookdale. It provides a spot for the PTA president, the school board liaison from there. The mayor can't appoint those people. It provides a place for the cops officer, now moving towards the NRT officer, and wherever there are established block clubs within the city. And so, you know, my hope is, it's obvious I wasn't asking for any kind of emergency passage, is that we would have healthy, real dialogue without the politics about if this is good. And the only way we can do that is by engaging residents, one, who are already out there trying to do this work, and showing that we're trying to support their work by creating a solid network. I will use this example and then I'll stop. If any of you remember cell phones, it used to be that cell phones didn't all communicate. You had to be on the same network. Our neighborhoods are not on the same network. We need to create a network so that neighborhoods can communicate smoothly between themselves, along with us as the administration, and there's more to this, but I think this past weekend let us know that as leaders, we need to do our part in helping create a way for our communities to be better organized so that they can mobilize on emergency issues, and then on a more normal range of things, just be able to engage us and have input on legislation that's going to impact their local communities. Thank you.
Are there any comments from the committee? Councilman Fusco.
Yeah, just a couple real quick. I understand the intent. I totally understand the intent of trying to organize a ward, and having been a ward council member in the past, you know, I would stay in touch with all the organizations that was active in the ward, and I would, you know, meet with them constantly. As I'm sure everybody else here, I'd like to hear from other ward council members how they handle theirs. You know, formalizing something like this, I'm not too sure about. I guess it's up to a ward member, you know, and let them, you know, kind of control their own destiny. But you mentioned that the law department who's here, I'd like to ask them to weigh in on this particular piece.
Councilman Fusco, I'm happy to ask that.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
That's okay. On your behalf, I'm more than happy to ask that. Would you mind, please, sharing with us what you have?
So due to unfortunate circumstances beyond our control, we are sort of left today without the use of any really usable technology. Our system is down, so we have no access to our documents. And unfortunately, the attorney who primarily dealt with this particular issue is off-site doing legal research, because that can't be done here for a brief that has to be filed this afternoon. In any event, I'm here to try and answer some of those questions, but generally speaking, I think the one major issue charter-wise that exists with respect to the requested legislation, it has to do with the mayor's authority under the charter to appoint to boards and commissions. And it says that he has the exclusive authority to appoint to all boards and commissions with the approval of council. So the way that the current legislation was phrased was that there was a pool of candidates that were brought to the mayor, sort of artificially limiting what he could choose. So in that sense, it's the law department's opinion that, yes, that would violate the charter, structured that way.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Councilman Fusco.
So in essence, you're telling me that this violates the charter in its current form?
Yes, that's our opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Just a moment, please. I have a concern if it violates our charter, why it even got this far. Is there nothing that preclude, oh, you know what, I take that back. We have another new piece that's going to come before us that may answer that, but I don't know, your job, your responsibility is just to write what someone gives you, whether it's in line with our charter or not. And please, your department, not you, your department. Would that be a correct statement? And let me just put this real basic. My other profession, probably the one I got the most joy from, was teaching. And not everything had to be written. We just knew that it wasn't right to do, so you didn't do it. So do we have any barriers that would have said we shouldn't have had this come before us?
Well, I will, can you hear me? I will address that question. There are some limited rules with respect to the process of requesting legislation through the law department, as you know, in council's rules. There are times where, and always in advance, when we do get a request, we do advise the requesting council member or members of the law department's opinion on the piece. Having said that, there are times when the council members, notwithstanding the opinion, wish nonetheless to introduce the piece to city council for consideration. At that point, certainly, that is what happens. So
would you concur that what is in front of us now, the law department believes goes against our charter, and it's still coming before us to vote on?
Yes, that's exactly what is happening.
All righty. Thank you. And any other members of the committee? Any other questions from members of council? Okay. Well, you were the originator of this piece. Do you have any other last comments?
Yes, I do. I was waiting for, I'd asked for earlier. Again, when the piece came in for us to have discussion. No legislation comes in perfect. It comes in for discussion. The law department stated that was their opinion. It does not prevent the mayor from making selections. He makes the final decision. Organically, those folks, those recommendations come from the community. As I stated, you can't go in and tell a block club or a neighborhood association who their president is going to be. But if they represent that area, they have already selected who their leader is, and you just honor them within this process. But the whole reason we bring legislation in and wait a year and a half is so that we can have healthy discussion and debate, which has not taken place with this. Because the work that would be needed to have community discussions was delayed or didn't want to take place, didn't want to have those discussions, we just let it sit. We've got a habit of doing that. This past weekend, we saw what happens when a community is not organized to know how to get in touch with folks on the grassroots level. I'm saying we have legislation that shows us how to organize our communities. And to say that I've been a councilman for 10 years, going on 10 years. I know how to engage my ward. But just like we have a formal structure for representation from each one of our wards here on council, what I'm talking about is that we have formal representation in our wards for them to be able to have input. Because when this first came in, and when my ward was like, hey, wait a minute, no one had a conversation with us, was when they changed Copley Road from 4 lanes to 2, one way each direction. My community was like, Why didn't anybody talk to us? That's on the legislative side. As far as addressing issues, everything from an emergency like we saw right here to just even working with the Neighborhood Assistance Department so that we can better engage our constituents to take advantage of the City Council grant program that we wrote. The bottom line, this came in so that we can engage those residents and have their input that are out there organizing our communities for us already, and find out how can we best support them by putting a process in place, as well as having dialogue around the horseshoe. Again, it's before the committee. If the committee doesn't want to have any discussion about it, if they want to take the easy way out and say that because it's their opinion, there's plenty of opinions. That's why we have different levels within our judicial system, because someone doesn't always agree with the first opinion and they appeal it to the next one. Part of the legislative process is that we have discussion and we vet it to make it the best. I'm not what was brought in, I wasn't saying was the best form of legislation as presented, but I'm saying the principle of it is something that we need in this community. We have a neighborhood assistance department, it would fit right under that. But so as far as if I'll say this again, if the only reason this body is against the legislation is because of an opinion, not a fact, not that it's just an opinion, because again, as it's stated right now, the mayor picks those groups that he can. Now, if he has if the law department is saying that he should be able to pick who the student council president is, who the school board liaison is, and those other things, those are already picked for us. If they want to go in and say that he should be able to pick who the neighborhood presidents are that are going to be on the board, when we already acknowledge your leadership through what used to be our COPS program, then that's what this body is supposed to, we can work around those things. But like I said, this has been before us long enough. If this body feels that they have enough information, I just call that they go ahead and vote on it, please.
Thank you. Madam President.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to speak just from a ward perspective. I appreciate Councilman Neal bringing this forth, but to me it just seems like we're reinventing the wheel a little bit, and you already spoke to it. You know, in our wards we already have so many block watch groups and neighborhood associations who are already doing the work. Maybe the thing that we might want to think about is the ways that maybe we can bring those groups together collectively to have some conversation, but not having to reinvent the wheel and creating a whole new council and having the mayor appoint people. We already really have something in place in all prospective wards.
Madam President,
excuse me, Mr. Neal, let me call on you, please.
Okay, well.
Councilman Neal.
Thank you. That's what this piece is. It creates a formal structure, it creates synergy, so that there's an understanding of how we communicate. Right now, there's no way of knowing who to contact and which way to go. We just had it this past weekend. Folks know about block clubs. We know about these different groups, but there's no synergy in which to network these groups. And so this provides us a vehicle in which to use as a framework to create that type of infrastructure. Because if not, what we have right now, we have, these groups work together, but in some cases you even have self-ordained leadership groups in areas. This right here will put a formal structure, just like this is formal representation from every ward right here around this horseshoe. So that if something needs to be done, we know to call us together so that we can make a decision on behalf of the city. In our wards, we have block clubs and whatnot, and as Mr. Fusco and others have mentioned around here, everybody handles the way they engage them differently. We need a formal process so that, God forbid, if we have another situation like we did last time, we know how to engage it. But more on a healthier note, just engage our wards so that we can leverage the energy that's in it to make our overall community better, individual wards and overall community better.
Thank you. Councilman Fusco.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Council Representative Somerville in that if a ward council person is going to be active in their community, which is very advisable, obviously, in bringing together the leadership of the various entities within that ward area, neighborhood. I think that's what should be done. Agree 1,000% that the more voices we have together, the better off we are as a city and as a community and as a ward. However, though, I think it should be up to the ward council representative to control their own destiny, if you will, and another level of, we all know this word, bureaucracy. I'm not sure if that's a good direction to go in formally. However, though, I do lean to the law department and their opinion. And if their opinion is that this violates our Akron charter, that if it violates Akron charter, then I believe that it's up to this committee, and we've asked for a vote, that I would like to recommend an adverse report on this particular item because it violates the charter.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Are there any more comments from those in the committee?
Need a second.
Okay. And we have a motion on the floor. One thing I do want to say is, Councilman Neal, I would, were you aware that this possibly violated the charter?
I had much discussion. Yes, I was aware. It is my opinion that first you got to bring it in for council to have healthy discussion to vet a stronger piece of legislation. And as it came in, that it did not restrict the mayor from making the appointment. Just like we do around here when we bring, excuse me, ma'am, I'm answering your question. Just like we do around here where we bring in suggestions for a body of folks to be on a committee, what it did is that group in some areas where there wasn't leadership, that would come from those residents.
Thank you. My question was, were you aware? And if you were aware, did you choose to change anything? But also I want to say, I would have personally liked you to have come to me with this when you decide to bring it in and have a sit down with me. And I know you're going to tell me you brought it out here and I had every opportunity, but I have to tell you also, I believe good legislation starts with a need, and then after you research best practices, you come to your colleagues and you say, I'm thinking about bringing this in, what do you think about it? And there's healthy discussion before we even bring it into the chambers and then after it's been designed by the law department and created and brought in. So I will tell you, I believe that any group in my ward that chooses to meet, I'll meet with them, and I have met with them. I don't know if I need to have something written down that says that I have to be somewhere or somebody has to be appointed. So having said that,
Madam Chair,
I am not done yet, Mr. Neal.
I said excuse me. I didn't.
It doesn't matter if you said excuse me. I am not done yet, and I do have the floor right now.
Okay.
Thank you. My point is, if when I create legislation and it is good for my residents, then I need to champion my individual colleagues on one-on-one and tweak whatever needs to be tweaked and then brought it in. If this was brought in the original format and you were aware that it goes against our charter, then I find it a bit concerning that nothing was changed and you had that awareness.
Okay.
Thank you, I am done now.
Okay, Madam Chair, now, to your point, a year and a half ago, this legislation came in, and I did go to colleagues. I asked for your input. I asked for organizations in your ward who would even give input on this piece. So I did go to colleagues. And excuse me, you have to please explain to me why you felt I had to come to you, because I don't even know if you were in a position a year and a half ago when this came in to even discuss the legislation, because first, if you were president at that time, every legislation comes before you and you see it before you assign it, if you were president. And if you weren't president, just like I said, I went to each member of council and gave them the legislation, asked for input. This was a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago. So for the way you just performed right there, I don't understand why, because it's been a year and a half that this has been in the Rules Committee. A year and a half ago, I brought this in, and we can go back and check the tape. I engaged residents, members of council. I asked for your input. I asked for you to please share with me members, and even if you had folks in your ward who wanted to comment on the legislation. Again, when it came in, I didn't bring it in as being the final proof. Like other pieces of legislation I brought in, I asked us to have discussion on it. But this committee had refused to have discussion because they were going on the point that they said the law department's opinion was that it violated the charter. And if what we would have done in discussion is work through that process, because I think the piece that everyone is missing, yeah, everybody's organized, but you need a formal, to do some of the work that we're talking about, you need a formal process to be able to address that. And if this body, if this body doesn't see that, that's fine. That's part of the process. But what I'm saying is, this past weekend showed us on the emergency side, when a community is not organized, what could happen. And I can tell you within, I think all of us have had times when things have been done in the ward, and community members come up and said, hey, we didn't know anything about this legislation. Why was this done? A formal process helps us address all of those issues.
Councilman Fusco. Call for the question and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. There are just 3 members of this committee here. There was a motion for an adverse report. Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will move forward as an adverse report. We have another piece that's coming before us on our new legislation. This is resolution, amending resolution number 53-2012 as amended to revise and supplement Rule 6.11 of the Rules of Procedure for Akron City Council to ensure a timely and orderly assignment of legislation for consideration by committees and declaring an emergency. The sponsor of this piece of legislation is President Somerville, so I will turn this over to you if you'd like to comment on that, President.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I know this piece came in late, so that is to my apologies. So I'm not asking for any motion or consideration on this today, just asking that all council members have an opportunity to review it. And please let me know if you have any further questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Motion to, I have a motion and a second to refer. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anything else? Councilman Neal.
I did have a question on this piece, because there's been a number of times when legislation has been requested, and it's been requested in time, and then the legislation wasn't produced. So I'm hoping that as we talk about this, we talk about vetting the process between council and the law department and the response on getting legislation done timely. Because I think and we've said it before, one of the times, if we send a legislative request to the law department, it has nothing to do with what the administration is doing. Mm-hmm. To Mr. Kilby's point, that's a separate branch of government. I do believe that we need to work in unison together, but that's a separate branch of government. If a member of this legislative body asks for legislation, don't hold it up because it's something that the administration is doing. Separate. If not, if that's going to continue to be a problem, then what we need to do is look at independent counsel for this body so that legislation can be produced in a timely manner. That's my only concern, because I've got a piece that's still waiting to be drafted, and there's been some pieces that have been, like the primary issue that we were dealing with, and one that's coming in later for me. So that's my only concern, that we look at both pieces.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. We are adjourned. We are adjourned. I'm sorry, Mr.
What did we do with this? I stepped out of the room. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, still one more committee, utility. And was there a motion to adjourn? Okay, 4:15.
Public utilities will start in 1 minute.
All right.
All members of Public Utilities is present except for Freeman. We will approve meeting minutes from our previous meeting at our next council meeting.
Correct.
Couldn't say that really fast. We're going to take time on a piece that Kilby was bringing in because James Hardy's not here, so we're surpassing that today. I told Holly that this morning, unless you guys want to. Okay, you can wait? Okay, next week. Next week. Okay. And so we're moving on to number 8, resolution urging the city of Akron to implement a temporary utility relief policy for qualifying individuals impacted by the recent shutdown of the federal government and declaring an emergency. This piece was offered by Councilman Neal. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This piece basically comes off of a resolution that council passed last 2 weeks ago in relation to the federal shutdown. At that time, stated that it was good for us to urge the President and Congress to end the shutdown, but there was something that we can do in relation to what some of corporate America and other communities were doing, which was extending temporary relief to their customers or residents of their cities in regards to the water bill for folks that are federal employees. I want to thank I think Mr. Angelini finally drafted this up. And all this does is say that we're asking our administration to put together a special program for federal employees that would, as per the example I sent from, I believe, Miramar, Florida, they're doing away with any late fees, disconnect fees, and they are giving them interest-free opportunities to make payments on their water bills until this thing is finally addressed. We know that there's a 3-week reprieve, it looks like, but still, if you've missed 2 weeks of pay, you're trying to play catch-up. And the way it looks, if you listen to any of the channels yesterday, it seems like this 3 weeks may not turn into a temporary fix. We could go into another shutdown. So with that, that's the reason for the legislation, is to build upon what council passed last week and actually extend some type of real monetary relief to our residents that happen to be federal employees.
So we'll open the floor for any questions from committee members.
This
Mr. Kilby?
particular piece of legislation is commendable, but is it kind of a moot question since there's no longer a shutdown now? How does it apply now?
Well, if you listened to a lot of discussion first, some of these folks have already missed 2 weeks' pay.
Okay.
So they're behind as it is, and they don't know if the actual shutdown is going to, if this 3-week period, if there's going to be a resolution. So as we stated last week, when I made the comment that, hopefully we won't need it, but that we should extend this relief. Again, if we put the policy in place and we don't need it, that's great. But I think there's some residents right now, depends on how you manage your resources. They're 2 weeks in the hole without their pay. They don't know when
Actually, they missed 30 days of pay, so they're a full month in the hole.
Yeah. So, so this, something like this could help.
I'm sorry, did you have a question?
No, I mean, to your point, when you said 30 days, I said 2 weeks, I meant two pay periods, but you're right. And just because they're getting paid doesn't mean that, everything is okay right now. They're already behind on some of their bills. This could be a way to help them.
Mr. Swerke, Councilman Swerke.
I would like it better if you, in this resolution, I'm probably going to support it, but, and the last resolution we did about this border wall controversy, I'd put the finger on Trump a little bit more. I prefer that, but I don't think that's a reason to vote against it. I just, for the future, I wish we'd all take a look at who's causing the problem. In this case, isn't the city already doing some things?
We were looking to implement this policy.
Yes.
Again, we want to help our employees, our citizens who were impacted by the furloughs. So we are looking to implement something that will help them. Again, they do have a 3-week reprieve, but there are probably people who cannot pay their water bills. So again, we are looking to make sure we help them in some manner until they get back on their feet.
Okay, so you're already looking into it.
Yes.
But we don't have an existing program
We
yet.
do not currently have one. We are
Okay.
working on drafting something.
Okay.
Mr. Hope?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this, have we ever done anything like this before for anybody else in the city of Akron that has lost their job or haven't been able to?
I think we had something similar a few years ago, and it was when people were called up to serve overseas. We were looking to try to make sure we supported those families as well. So this would be something similar.
Yeah. Have we ever done it with any of the factories or the people that have lost their jobs and
We have
companies have
not.
moved out?
But again,
Is it-
this was a
yeah.
special circumstance.
Do you think those people will come to us and ask for something
I
for the
think
next
they
next
potentially
wave? that-
could come to us.
Yeah.
And if they do come to us, we want to make sure we support them.
Sure, yeah, okay. Well, I just want to make sure that, we're not, singling out, a one-time, situation here, and that if it comes about and there's people that need help in our city and that we can do that, which we're also doing under the
Utility relief
utility,
policy.
yeah,
But we
relief
also
policy.
do enter into payment arrangements with other people who have trouble
Yes.
paying as well.
Okay, I just, wanted to make sure that, if it comes up again, that, we can look at that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Does anybody have any idea how many citizens of Akron work for the federal government or were affected by this? I mean, do we have any idea?
We do not have that information,
Yeah.
but again, as they present themselves, we are going to try to help them.
Okay, yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea. And this is a special circumstances, like Diane says, and I don't think anyone's going to ask for anything because they lose their job. I mean, that happens every day, so. And the difference is, like, these people, through no fault of their own, so.
But these people would still be responsible for paying the
Right,
bill. We
eventually.
are going to waive penalties and interest,
Right.
but they would still be responsible for paying when they got into a better financial
I
situation.
would guess there's not a whole lot in our city, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know anybody that works for the federal government. I know some military people, but were they paid, the military, during this shutdown?
If they did not get a check,
Yeah, I don't know.
they would fit into this situation.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Neal, you want to take time, or what do you want to do?
No, ma'am, I think because of the nature of what we're talking about, a favorable report with suspension of rules would be needed so that, you know, just showing our support for, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure the administration is still putting something in place just in case, you know, this comes about.
But again, we were going to implement a policy with or without this legislation, because it is something important to our citizens.
Well, I was just about to add, I mean, we're going to do this anyways. Administration was on top of it, already doing something. I don't think it hurts, so for us
Right.
to support this.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. So, vegetation, public utilities. So, we're not going to take a vote, but we'll let you all do a presentation. I'm just trying to be mindful of our time when we're getting
Just
ready to
took a
do
vote.
budget hearing stuff. So, how long do you think it's going to take?
Something new?
Yeah, this is from Kilby's piece.
Oh, we're back to Kills.
Yeah, we're going back, because the whole entire panel is here and they want to speak to that matter, but we're not going to take a vote on it. But in the interest of time, and we do have budget hearings, so if we could move a little expeditiously, that would be great.
So thank you, Chairwoman. We don't have a presentation. We just have some information that was requested earlier. We wanted to make sure council members received. Everyone should have gotten a spreadsheet. This is, Chairwoman Samples had asked for bills over $500 for 1 month. These are single-family residential structures, so it doesn't include apartment buildings that would have had several units on one bill, but it's a single unit that had a bill over $500, and there's an explanation at the end of each of those about how those individual bills were handled, some information about possibly what caused that high bill. So we were only able to produce 1 month's worth of data because we had to go through account by account individually. Unfortunately, there's no way to run a report on just residential single family. So we had some staff go through and pull individual data. So that's there for council to look at if you have any questions. Additionally, everyone should have gotten just, once again, a summary of how the policy works. And I can just walk through that really quickly. First point, the Oregon administration implemented the utility bill relief policy in 2016 to provide relief from high bills resulting from leaky toilets, burst pipes, or unknown underground links. All property owners in Akron are eligible to utilize this property. You do not have to be a homeowner. Rental properties are eligible to use this policy. The only difference is if the entity that owns the home is a business, so it's owned by an LLC or a corporation. Those are generally larger landlord operations. They cannot utilize this relief if they have active housing code violations or delinquent balances. If they correct those housing code violations, they pay that delinquent balance, they can then utilize the policy. If you are a homeowner, just a homeowner occupied structure, you can have active housing code violations and you can even have an unpaid balance, and we'll still give you relief under this policy. So under the policy the mayor created, we've extended over $1.28 million in relief since 2016, and that's been to 1,500 customers. And the legislation before you, City Council does not have the legal authority to pass legislation that sets water rates or that implements billing policies related to the collection of those rates. So such legislation, if passed by this body, would be void. And that's because the City of Akron Charter and the Ohio Revised Code provide that authority to the service director and to the administration. So, but again, we are open to, if there is something about the way the utility relief policy is working now that is missing some category of needy individuals in Akron, we will look at the policy and we are open to revising that if there are folks out there who are experiencing these unusual high bills that are out of their control and they're not able to get relief. So as ward council people who get those calls, we would look to you to let us know if there's categories of people that are not being helped by this policy that we can further help. Additionally, the policy has a catch-all that says the Director of Public Service can extend relief if basically equity requires it. So if there's an extraordinary circumstance that we didn't think of and someone comes to us and says, hey, you know, this happened, we have that ability to extend relief. And again, those cases can be brought before the Service Director for consideration. So with that, I know we have short time, so I guess any questions?
I do have one. I don't want to mention first names on these residential consumption sheets, but the third from the bottom, I'll say Mitchell, where it says the total was $9,087, says property vacant, water found running and turned off. Is there any procedure or policy in place where if the water department sees that a water bill is accumulating, for us to go and knock or at least do some kind of check, because that seems like extremely high?
And maybe Diane can correct me. I believe we send a high consumption notice letter immediately. So we send a letter saying, hey, we noticed that your consumption is unusually high. And if someone wants to expand on how that communication works. But yes, we do notify customers if we notice unusual consumption.
So with it being vacant though, and you send a letter, no one's going to respond. So at what point do we step in, if that's something Mr. McCall can answer? I'm not sure. It just seems like at some point we would have realized there was a problem there.
And I think, you know, obviously, yeah, we did in this case, but when?
Right.
Without a switch.
Sure. To answer your question, yes, when we receive calls for high consumption, we read meters once a month. We get them automated. There's reports that are generated, and in those reports, we do look at the accounts to see if they're vacant, what would be what we call inactive in most cases. Situations like this usually occur when we go to shut water off, and somebody might even request for the water to be shut off because the property is vacant. In previous times, the property owners wouldn't take the liberty to meet us at the property, so we would shut the water off at the street. However, because we couldn't gain access, we wouldn't know whether or not it was actually off. We've changed that policy in the last few years to make it mandatory that someone meets us there so that we can verify that the water's off. However, when we do find those situations on the reports, we do roll a truck to actually then go out to try to physically shut the water off and contact whoever the appropriate owners of the property.
Okay. Any questions from committee? Mr. Neal? Mr. Kilby?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The problem with your policy is that it doesn't, you say it, anyone can apply for it, but in reality, like only 18% of the people that got some relief were, what's the term, non-individual account holders, which means mostly rental property. Is that correct, Ellen?
Well, it can be a rental property owned by an individual, so those would be a business that owns the property.
Okay, well, I'm reading this here from the bottom of this executive summary that you guys supplied a while back. It says other provisions. No non-individual account holder, business, etc., shall be eligible for any of the relief in this policy if the property at issue has multiple housing code violations or delinquent City of Akron utility account balances at the time of the request for relief, or if the Director of Public Service determines it would constitute an abuse of the policy. Now, here's the problem with this. Say, you know, many of these landlords, and, you know, we like to throw on the term slum landlord very loosely. Some may be, but my contention is probably the last thing they're going to ignore is their plumbing, their toilets, because they know they're going to get caught holding the bag if once the tenants can't pay it. Now, here's the problem with this. Some of them own multiple houses. So, in other words, if, say, house A, there's a problem, and this guy's got a problem at house B, the same landlord, so that precludes this person living in house A from getting relief, correct? Or if he owes money at the other one, not this one, but owes money somewhere else.
Right, so there's a balance there between encouraging landlords to be responsible and not rewarding them for not paying their bills or taking care of their property by giving them relief, regardless of the fact that they're failing to care for their property.
I think that's a bogus argument. I think their slum landlords are going to ignore their, there may be a few, the plumbing, but generally
well, if they're having issues at multiple properties, that may be an indicator that they're not caring properly for their plumbing.
But who gets caught and penalized is the renter. And half the houses in our city are rental property, they tell me. So through no fault of his own, this guy rented a house from some guy that didn't pay his water bill on the other side of town or something. So he cannot benefit from our policy. So I just think, and the facts show that, like none of these are all residential, these big ones that I can see. And then the chart that you guys supplied, only 18% of the people that got relief were non-residents.
No, that's not rental versus homeowner, though. That's the people who own the property are a business.
I just think we need to do something more to help out these renters. And I know it's a balancing act, but the policy just doesn't address.
So I guess we would ask for recommendations specific to the policy about how you would make those changes.
We need to work together and come up with something. I mean, I'm not the brain trust. You know, you guys are.
Again, it is a balance between encouraging property owners to take care of their property and trying to provide relief in extraordinary circumstances.
But in reality, the way it seems to be working out, these poor tenants are getting evicted out of their house.
And again, if those cases are happening, bring those cases to us, and we will see if there is not something that can be done.
I guess you guys do have a little flexibility.
And my understanding is given that the policy says you cannot get relief while you have a delinquent account, we have had landlords say, you know what, I'm going to pay that delinquent account. I'm motivated to pay my delinquent account now just so I can utilize this relief. And if we didn't have that rule, they would have said, I'm going to leave my account balance and I'm going to get relief. And this is striking that balance.
Some of these guys own multiple houses, hundreds. There's people, I don't know, who's the biggest landlord? Probably 300 or 400 houses in the city. Now, it's inconceivable that he wouldn't be behind on one, okay? Or, so
And again, we're willing to look at that. If there's a large property owner who owns several hundred properties, we'll take that into consideration.
We can discuss this more. I think we need to get into, I think Mr. He wants to say something, but we need to get into a capital budget review here pretty soon.
Did you want to say something, Mr. No. Okay, I'll make this real quick. One, if we can look at our technology, it seems like since we have trucks that drive down and scan these things, we should be able to catch some of these high water bills. Some kind of alert, if it's over a certain consumption, some kind of way we should be able to alert ourselves. Secondly, especially now that it's cold, I don't turn on my shower and just jump in. Maybe some of you do. I let it run. It's actually even for health reasons that when you turn on your water, you need to let it run so that the sediment and all that stuff runs out of your faucet for health reasons. Especially if you go on vacation, you need to let it run. We do it in the city. We flush our pipes from time to time. Can we kind of see if we can get a feel for giving residents, all residents, especially if this will work on, because I think these numbers for the sewer part are our numbers. Some form of like a 10% discount on their sewer off the top, because all they're doing in their homes are like we're doing in the city, is they're running their water to flush their pipes. I don't know. Again, everybody's water is going to heat up hotter, but there's enough folks here. Anybody here just jump right in their shower when they turn it on?
I don't. Oh, you
Okay, Bruce Kilby is the only one. Councilman Kilby is the only one. I think most of us let it flush. And honestly, if you talk to anyone for health reasons, you flush, you let that water run a little bit, because you can't just put it in the pot and boil whatever it is you're going to boil. You have to let some of that sediment. So just asking us to look into that to see if we could come up just with a small policy, say that. Then last but not least, I know we're having this discussion about Mr. Kilby's policy. I think the piece we're missing, unless I misunderstand what his policy says to go out over the last 6 months, and at the bill, they never pay more than 150%. Maybe it's 12 months. Never pay more than 150%. Never did I hear him say that they don't pay their bill. It's just that we make it manageable. So we're going over this whole thing acting like we're saying, hey, we're going to give these people and they're not going to pay their bill. No. To my understanding, when I read his legislation, it says that they never pay more than 150% of the last 12 months of the bill. Now, as he stated before, somebody can always abuse something, but what it does is it makes that bill more manageable. And if we connect it, like you were saying, with some of this other stuff where people pay their bills, of course, to get that kind of relief, you have to be current or working with the city to keep your bill current. And maybe what that will help us prevent is writing off that almost $800-something we defer and send over to bad. I think it was $800 to $1.2 million we were sending to the county every year as bad debt. Now, I know we get some of that back. So that's just my point. I think that changes the whole conversation when we realize we're not talking about giving them, writing that off. We're talking about deferring, averaging the balance.
I think that it would be interesting for Mr. Kilby to weigh in on that. Are they intended to pay the bill later and just be on a payment plan, or is that a bill they're never going to pay?
What's your question? I didn't hear it.
To Mr. Neal's question, which is the 150 a cap on the bill, or will they pay all of their usage eventually just over time?
The water, but the sewer part would be
Forgiven.
off because they never went down to sewer. But I have a question, Ellen. This little thing you handed out today, saying we don't have the authority, legal authority to pass legislation setting water rates or implementing billing policy. I understand policy is administrative function, but I'm basically talking about sewer. Sewer is the expensive part of your water bill, and we always vote on sewer rate increases. And I know we've never voted on water rate increases, but we do vote on sewer rate increases, correct?
Your legislation that you submitted that was drafted by outside hands says utility bill. It does not say sewer. Okay. So it includes all of a utility bill.
I might need to change that. But another thing, if we don't have the authority to pass an ordinance, we do have the authority to ask for a charter amendment to be voted on by the people, correct?
If you would like to propose a charter amendment, that's always within council's authority.
Thank you. We'll talk
Mr.
about
Fusco?
it some more.
Yeah. Just that, it seems as though the administration is receptive to these discussions and to continue this discussion. The utility bill relief policy was developed in 2016, saved a lot of money, if you will. But this legislation as proposed, it violates the charter, as we understand, and state law is very clearly defined here. What part of the charter, do you know the charter number? I'd like to check.
That would be, section 65, which is the authority of the service director.
Section 65 of the charter, so this violates the charter. So I just, now you're talking about perhaps doing something different or whatever, Mr. Kilby. I would ask that, obviously this in its present tense violates the Charter 65, as well as state law. And I would ask that, perhaps you may want to withdraw this at this time.
Yeah. Well, we're just having a discussion, so hopefully throughout the week we can have a discussion about that prior to us coming back to council on Monday. If we don't have any other questions, we are adjourned.
Nope. Okay. All right, in about 5 minutes, we'll begin the budget review.